Hello,
Hey
it is
there.
Jorbs, and this
And
is
Baylor.
Baalorlord. Yes, 2.5 years ago. Time is imaginary during the pandemic, so really, like yesterday,
Basically 15 minutes ago.
basically. Baylor, Terrence, and I had a 2-week period or something. It might have even been 1.5. It was very close together, where all three of us broke 10 wins in a row, rotating on Ascension 20 with Heart for Slay the Spire at like the same time, basically. Slay the Spire hasn't been out that long, but like that was basically the same exact moment in the history of the game. All three of us did it at the same time, which was really, really cool. And I had Baylor and Terrence on, and we all talked about our streaks, and it was a good time. And then stuff sort of mellowed out for a while. The 13-0 win streak that Terrence set, I eventually managed to equal it, but like nobody extended that for another year and a half plus. And then this year there's been some movement, and I got like a 15-0 and a 16-0 and a 17-0, and then like 2 weeks after my 17-0, Baylor got a 20-0.
20-0.
So we have now broken 20 barriers done, and also Baylor and I still like I don't know, our brains are just aligned. There's something about the weather or like we just decide to both win lots of runs of Slay the Spire in a row at the same time sometimes.
It's quite a confluence of factors. It seems like people in the community are inspired or get spurts of luck kind of at the same time. Like you said, this happened back in 2020 with the three-way tie. And I'd even say it happened before, back with the Ascension 15 win streaks. You originally set a score of 25, and I topped that.
I don't even remember that.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. I ended up topping that a little bit, and then Ascension 20 came out, and we started all over again. Here's a question for you. When Ascension 20 and the Heart first released, did you ever think that the game would see 20 consecutive wins under those conditions?
Oh my gosh. Well, it hasn't under those conditions.
That's true, yes.
There have been quite a few buffs since
Lizard
then to the
Tail
player.
is a boss relic, and I'll die on that hill.
Did the specimen used to be a boss relic?
Yes, tragically.
There are things that I just don't even believe. Like, I guess I lived through them, but people will remind me that they are true, and I'll be like, no.
Legends
Specimen couldn't be a boss relic.
Of a relic called Runic Dodecahedron.
I can tell you that the first time anyone got 10 in a row rotating was Crimson Blur, and then the three of us extended above that 10 and 0. And when he did it, I didn't think that was the end. I was very confident that we'd go above. And currently, I don't think this is the end. I'm very confident that we'll continue to improve.
I'm quite confident someone, whether it's you, me, or somebody else in the community, will break the 20 mark again and set a new record eventually.
Yeah, maybe not this year, but I would be surprised if it didn't happen next year. We're just getting better at the game. At the time, though, when the Heart came out, it was like very hard at that time to win 2 runs in a row. I feel like,
yeah.
So I was definitely not thinking about winning 20 at that time, and I'd won 20 before. I'd won over 20 on Silent on Ascension 15, and apparently I'd won over 20 rotating on Ascension 15. You were telling me, I didn't know that.
Yeah. 25 was the number I remember.
Okay, well, I will believe you.
Take my word for it.
So yeah, I mean, I knew what it felt like to win that many times in a row, and I knew how comfortable I expected to be in a run, going through a run like that. And at that time when the Heart was out, that was a massive change, because Ascension 20 was very recent as well. So the idea of fighting 2 bosses and then an Act 4 Elite fight, which is as hard as the bosses, basically, harder for some decks. And then the Heart itself, like, that is 4 times as many bosses. That's drastically changed how we had to think about building decks and how important the late game was versus the early game and things like that.
Absolutely. It's funny, to this day, I really don't think about those 2 bosses in a row, the Act 3 boss gauntlet, all that much. They seem to be in this weird space where all the other things that I'm preoccupied with solving end up incidentally addressing them, mostly.
Exactly. I remember when it started, though. Like, I used to play Act 3s where I dodged elites and saved the right potions for the boss I could see I was fighting, and my deck didn't have to be anywhere near as strong. But when there's another boss afterwards, so your potions can't just carry you through, and you don't even know which one it is, all of a sudden you have to make a much stronger deck there. But yeah, now that like the heart's in the game, most of the Act 3 bosses are incidental for most decks.
Definitely.
For sure.
Act 4 changed the decision making a lot. I definitely remember the very early games of Spire. I was stoked to get to the end of Act 3 with a strength potion and a dexterity potion. I was like, oh, I've got my scaling for the boss.
That's
done.
enough for Donu Deka. Or Donu Deka. So my first question before we actually look at the runs is what would you identify as being the catalyst for improving to a level where you can win 20 runs in a row, at least one time, and maybe another? And how do you see yourself improving further to do even more than that?
Excellent question. So the way I kind of think about it is with 20 victorious runs in a row, used to be that you would get smaller streaks, 5 wins, 6 wins, 7 wins, and then somewhere along the way there'd be a loss, and then you get another win streak after that. So you'd have like 5 wins, then 1 loss, then 6 wins. And for me, getting to 20 meant figuring out how to turn just those couple of losing low roll runs into winning ones to keep the chain going.
Mm-hmm.
And
so grit, determination,
grit. Yes, grit. Actually, I have a specific run to talk about when it comes to grit and morale and just keeping your head level-headed.
Definitely outside of Slay the Spire strategy itself, waking up and playing runs of Slay the Spire and being dialed in and winning for this many days in a row is just mentally taxing.
Absolutely, 100%. I think that being able to consistently or approach the game with a fresh and able mind is required when you're trying to get this many win streaks in a row. You have to show up, 10 days, 20 days in a row and be able to concentrate and focus and not tilt or any of that. The longer the win streak gets, the more of a test of your own mental fortitude or even just your own routine and consistency. Sometimes that can be out of stuff that's out of your control. Like you need to go 20 days in a row without having allergies take your mental capacity away from you.
Yeah.
Or you need to be able to recognize those days and decide, I'm not going to play the game today.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Which is tough as a streamer where playing the game is our job, right? So
Definitely.
This is not a competitive thing that I expect anybody else to do or care about, because I don't want anybody to wake up and they're like, oh, I really love streaming Slay the Spire to viewers, and I really care very much about my results, but I don't feel like I should stream today because I'm not feeling great. I'd much rather they are like, well, I'm not streaming great today, but I love Slay the Spire and I love streaming it, so let's get online and stream Slay the Spire, and that'll improve my mood. Like, that sounds like a healthier relationship to the game for me. And a lot of the time, that's my relationship to the game, and I definitely don't want to like hold the idea that this has to be what you're trying to do while playing Slay the Spire. And doing like that idea is kind of like, to me, it's a bit ableist. It's very stressful. It's not something that I think people should feel like they have to do unless they want to. In which case, cool.
Nor is it necessarily what you need to set out to do, I'll say, because I wouldn't even necessarily that I was trying to win as many games in a row as possible.
Sometimes you just win.
Sometimes you just win. I very much focus on playing the game for my own enjoyment as well as the entertainment of my community. And sometimes I will make different choices than might be optimal for that reason.
Myself as well.
But I think those ultimately help my relationship with the game, which is required for my play with the game to exist. So there's a sort of weird, I have to be suboptimal in order to remain optimal kind of interaction going on there.
The way I frame that for myself, I think it's time to get into runs here. I have to go back to the start. Takes a while these days.
Yeah, I've had your first failed run up here this whole time.
Oh, thank you. The way that I frame that is, let's say I'm in a win streak and I want to turn that loss into a win. And when you get a run that would usually be a loss for you in Slay the Spire, you're generally not presented the choices that you're comfortable with or used to or that you think are strong, right? You're not going to get your most normal floor 1 common pick that leads to a 1 run. You're going to get offered some weird cards that you're not used to using. If I want to win that run instead of lose it, I want to have practiced runs in tons and tons and tons of different conditions. So in order to keep the game fresh for myself and to put myself in situations where I feel like I'm going to be comfortable adapting in like a high pressure situation, if you've won 15 in a row and you're trying to win a 16th, that feels pretty stressful sometimes. That's a lot of time invested if you care about win streaks at all. That's higher stakes than anything else I've ever done in Spire. There aren't like tournaments with money in this game or anything. And the reason I say this is that in the loss before this win streak on floor 1 in a slime boss act, I was offered Metallicized Perfected Strike and Fire Breathing and took Metallicize. And I
Metallicized
don't
Perfected Strike, Fire Breathing.
I don't think I'd like ever do that in a win streak, really. It's possible that I have a whale bonus that gives me a ton of damage here, so I don't need Perfected Strike or Fire Breathing, but like Fire Breathing's great here if I want to take sentries and slime boss out of my pool of threatening enemies. And Perfected Strike is great here for having damage for Gremlin Nob and Lagavulin. And I think I just took Metallicize because I wanted to see what a run on Ironclad with Metallicize start looks like.
Yeah, I completely respect that decision making. I make choices like that all the time.
Yeah. Because I need to know stuff like that because I may be forced to play one in a win streak and I don't want that to be the first time ever.
Yeah, exactly. Getting experience with all sorts of conditions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I took Metallicize on floor 1 in this loss, and I think the other thing that I saw, I got an early combust, so I have this weird deck going on where I have like 2 powers that do damage over time, which sort of incentivizes me to have more defense. Then I got an Apotheosis, and I'm like, okay, cool, so my defense will upgrade. That's a good way to have more defense. I guess I got Apotheosis at the whale, which is why I took Metallicize, because I figured my strikes could do more damage. Working backwards here. But the big thing for me is like, I think Anger's the strongest Ironclad common in my experience, and I think that this deck could definitely use it and that it's good against Slime Boss. But I just wanted to see, I guess, could I make this run work leaning more into this like play defensive cards and let the powers do stuff angle? Because I didn't take Anger, which is likely why I lost the game.
Anger is definitely good against Slime Boss. Something I've learned.
Yeah. So then I walked into the slime boss fight with 37 HP, a whirlwind, a combust plus, an apotheosis, and a paper frog, and just died.
Bummer.
Sucks to die, but also, if anything, I enjoy dying in Slay the Spire more than I enjoy winning. So it's not like I'm that upset about it.
Yeah, I think you learn more when you die than when you win a lot of the time.
Certainly easier to take lessons out of the runs which are close losses than it is to take runs out of the set of runs which you win overall. There are some close wins where there are a lot of interesting things, but every loss is close at some point because at some point your health did get close to and eventually cross the 0 line.
Yes.
Not every win is close at any point.
True.
All right, so I don't think we need to get into every single decision for these runs. Mine are all up on YouTube. I think yours are all up on your YouTube as well, yeah?
Definitely, yeah. And we should link to the playlist in the description of this video for each of those so folks can see all the runs we're talking about.
Sure. This is a silent run that's a little bit weird for sure because it's a Dead Branch silent run, and Dead Branch is always going to make your runs different from runs that don't have Dead Branch.
Definitely. Also, the thing that stands out to me about this one is a Mark of the Bloom run. I don't see these too often from other players. And I think it's a very cool event in Act 3.
4 cards per turn. I would say that I take Mark of the Bloom. I think fighting the Act 1 boss is kind of the default at that event. And then your conditions for taking 2 normalities for 919 gold are like, you have Omamori is an obvious reason to do that. Or you have a shop coming up very quickly and perhaps also have a courier would be another reason to do it. And your conditions for upgrading all cards in the deck are like, well, you just have to understand what happens if you upgrade all of the cards in your deck and make a choice. It's a very committal choice to not be able to gain your health at any point in any way for the rest of the run. Lizard
Yeah.
Tail doesn't work. Fairy in a Bottle doesn't work. Nothing works anymore.
Yeah, for me, that choice is all about recognizing, like, when does the fully upgraded deck just stop taking damage? And that's usually if there's a ton of draw upgrades and a ton of energy upgrades that you're getting all at once.
Yep, I would say Runic Pyramid plus Apparitions to suddenly have 3 Apparitions is a really big one too.
Yeah.
Sometimes you'll have a deck which is very close to being infinite, and like upgrading your Adrenalines and Acrobatics or something like that will just end the run sort of clearly. You can also think about it like just in terms of the value of the upgrades. I got 22 upgrades from this Mind Bloom.
That's
How
a lot of
much
upgrades.
health does an upgrade save you in the remaining fights of the run? Looking at what fights you think are left in the run. Like, if an upgrade can save me, I don't know, like 1 to 2 health over all of the fights that are left in the run, then taking 22 upgrades should save me like 40 health, and that's pretty comparable to how much I could like rest and sustain for and get the heal after the bosses. So that's another framework that's useful for me in approaching it, is just like, how valuable is an upgrade for this deck? How value is sustained for this deck? If I had a Pantograph, this choice would have been much more weighted against taking the Mark of the Bloom. But yeah, this is like a silent run. Scrolling over it real quick, I got to 16 HP against Slime Boss, but I did not get lower than that at any point in the entire run, I don't believe.
Not too bad.
So, pretty easy one off the Dead Branch early. Win number 2 is a Runic Pyramid Defect deck. This is, I would say, I win as Defect in 2 main ways. One is to do some sort of card spam thing with Recycle, and the other is to do some sort of scaling thing with Orbs. And I've certainly won with Defect in other ways, but everything else relies on different things to get started, whereas both of those ways to win as Defect just sort of rely on Compile Driver and Cool Headed. And so my Defect strategy is based fairly heavily around taking cards like Compile Driver and Cool Headed, because card draw is good for everything. And then that card draw very naturally transitions into putting orbs in play and making them stronger, or doing some sort of infinite thing. In this case, this deck had some trouble finding block. I remember finding it very funny that I had 3 Equilibriums in my deck after taking Runic Pyramid at the end of Act 1. But I just was not offered very many sensible block cards, so that's what I ended up taking. And yeah, it ended up. It's a Runic Pyramid deck. These tend to be very, very strong by the time they survive to late game. I used to expect to skip almost every elite after taking a Runic Pyramid at the end of Act 1, because well, the low-cost cards weren't as strong, so your deck wasn't as strong going into Act 2 back then, and also I just knew that I could win almost for sure if I made it to even like the start of Act 3. Like, Runic Pyramid really starts to get going if you pick up another boss relic and get a 4th energy or something, even for a mediocre deck. But nowadays, I'll take Runic Pyramid and be like, oh, I have Runic Pyramid, cool. I will also kill all the elites in Act 2.
Yeah.
Because the strength of a lot of the cards has just increased, and perhaps my ability to build the decks to let me do that has increased as well. And that is what happened there. All right, Watch Your Run. I will probably not be talking a ton about Watch Your Runs. I will say that I find Watch Your Runs very interesting for the first 15 floors these days, and then they often stop being interesting.
Watcher can definitely have some very similar mid and late games.
Yes. Yes, very, very, very much so. So I think that the really interesting thing on Watcher in terms of strategy is trying to work out if it is worth it to take value cards early on to make yourself perhaps a little bit stronger going through Act 2, but in doing so, make it harder to get down to 8 cards to go infinite in the hard fight with Rushdown and things like Rushdown, like Mental Fortress, Inner Peace, Empty Mind, and stuff like that.
Yeah,
because there are a lot of infinites for
Yes.
Watcher.
Yeah, I was
once you get
I'm
down
basically about to
to-
say that.
once you get down to that number of cards. But if you're above that number of cards, that doesn't really work, and you have to engage with the card pool a lot more. You have to start working out how are you going to block an attack for 67 on turn 2 of the heart fight and stuff like that. Where with an infinite, it's like, well, I will be infinite, which is an easy answer to the question. And lately, I have been erring more towards just going for 8 cards every time. And this is a Watcher run where I did this, and so are all of the other ones, I think. So I took a Crush Joints to deal damage. I got a Mercury Hourglass. I bought a Rushdown on floor 10, which I go back and forth about buying Rushdown early, because you definitely run into some elite and other fights, especially in Act 2, where your turn 1 just is too much damage and your Rushdown in hand isn't doing anything. And there are also other ways to win that don't require Rushdown. I ended up taking Apparitions, which I don't always do, but that helps with your slow start, and then I won. And if you've seen me play Watcher before, you've seen how that happens. And if you've seen a variety of other people play Watcher before, you've also seen how that happens.
Oh, yeah.
So, all right. Ironclad run with 37 cards and a Sundial and a Corruption.
Big clad.
Yes. It also has 2 flashes of steel. So despite the fact that this deck has 37 cards in it, it has 3 offerings. This deck won off an infinite, I'm pretty sure. Which is very common as Ironclad. You have so much exhaust available, and your card pool includes Dropkick and Rage and Sundial as an uncommon relic. Like, you often just accidentally build an infinite, even if you were trying to do something else.
Yeah, there's one of my favorite ways for Ironclad to be victorious is this 40 card deck that then exhausts down to a subset of 5 or so, and you've got double tap, drop kick, pummel strike, something like that, flash of steel that can loop very simply. You may or may not have Sundial. You can use a Rage for bash, but it's ultimately all about the Burning Pact and the Fiend Fire and the
Second wind
stuff.
Dark Embrace is huge anytime you're doing that.
Dark Embrace is probably my favorite Ironclad card. I think it's one of the most breakable cards.
Yeah,
on the character.
It's very, very, very strong.
Arguably more so than a Rushdown even, except it's not free.
True. It used to be that Dark Embrace was the rare card and Corruption was the uncommon card, and then those switched in some patch in Slay the Spire's history. I don't remember exactly.
I remember that. I still feel like it was a buff to both cards when they did that.
Yeah, so do I actually. And lots of people in my chat when I'm playing with Corruption will be like, remember when Corruption was uncommon? You could do this like every run, and it was so easy. It was so broken. And I'm like sitting there thinking like, okay, but Dark Embrace is uncommon now. And it's like just as strong. The two resources in the game that matter the most are energy and card draw, and Corruption gives you basically unlimited energy, and Dark Embrace gives you basically unlimited card draw. So
that's very well put.
Both very breakable cards.
That's why it's broken, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Silent run. I got to play 1,000 cuts plus in this run, which is one of my favorite things to do as Silent. I find that I can often justify taking 1,000 cuts if it's a slime boss act in Act 1. I say justify because like I really want to take it.
You do have to justify it. It's so expensive.
It costs 2. 2 is so much energy.
I only have very, very few victorious 1,000 cuts decks on A20 Heart, but I agree. If you don't very often see 1,000 cuts in Act 1 before Slime Boss, but if you do, you get to take it. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, which is very awesome. I think this deck actually took it a bit later. I don't know when exactly I took it. Oh no, I bought it on floor 5 at a merchant. Okay, well, I don't know what I was doing, but I guess I chose to do that.
Bought it.
Anyway, I like the card. I do like the card. And I think that I take Adrenaline over Wraith form very often on Silent these days. I think that this is a character where you have so much availability of acceleration to set up powers, and the powers are very good. That you can do stuff like that. I would say the acceleration's slightly less available than the powers, so I think I take the acceleration over the powers usually. But yeah, like I'm taking Adrenalines. I already have a Centennial Puzzle in my deck in Act 1. I'm taking Anchors and Bag of Preps very high, and I take Acro on floor 0 now, which is a fascinating change to how I've played Silent. And I'll talk about that more later. I don't really want to get into it a ton here. But this run has 5 copies of Acrobatics and 1,000 cuts, and I think that's pretty sweet.
That is pretty sweet.
That's my general opinion of this run.
Like Bronze Scales probably put in some work too.
Bronze Scales is so good. It hits so many times. I think this might be the only Snekko Eye run of the entire win streak for me. I have not been taking Snekko Eye as often as I used to at all. But yeah, this is like a Meteor Strike, a Snekko Eye, and 24 other cards.
Meteor
is my
Strike is
basic opinion of
such
this
a
deck.
breakable card.
It very, very, very much is, even without Snekko Eye.
Agreed. I'm rapidly approaching the place where I think it might be correct to just pick Meteor Strike if you see it.
Yeah, I've been there before for sure. If I have anything building energy in any way, if I have a charge battery in Act 1, and I have a deck which can afford to have a dead draw sometimes, which is a thing that's tricky to judge sometimes. But like if you have compile drivers in Act 1 and cool headeds in Act 1, which like I said is how I tend to prioritize cards on defect early, you get to have a dead card in your draw. Like it's much less painful. And if I like also have a charge battery or a turbo or a lantern or a happy flower or anything like that, I'm often interested in taking Meteor Strike early before I can even realistically cast it. I mean, you can get an energy potion, you can get a liquid memories. Liquid memories is such a cool potion to have in the game.
Getting started with Meteor Strike using a potion is one of my favorite. I've had runs that just like chained cheating Meteor Strike into play like 3 different ways. It was like Ancient Tea Set into Energy Potion into Liquid Memories for 3 fights in a row or something. And just get through Act 1 that way.
And then eventually you'll reach a point where you can just like play it off your Snekko Eye or use like Seek Plus that you've bottled to get Aggregate and Meteor Strike on turn 1 and then draw your entire deck. And, you know, it gets stronger and stronger.
That card is also one of my favorite use cases for Enlightenment, a colorless card that has mostly no use, but if you can make Meteor Strike cost 1, it's pretty good.
Enlightenment does not feature in this set of runs, but I have had it in my deck in my life. That's about as positively as I can speak about Enlightenment.
I really wish I could say that in my 20 streak included the run that I won off the back of Forethought Plus, but I don't think that's the one.
I had a Forethought recently, I think. Or maybe I already had a setup and was considering a Forethought, but didn't take it. This Watcher run went to 4 HP against Guardian, and then, you know, won very, 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 very easily after that.
Do you remember the last time you died to Guardian? I've gotten really close recently, but I can't remember in living memory when it happened.
I've died to Guardian in the last 100 runs, I'm pretty sure, but I don't remember the run. But also, like, if I'm not in the middle of a win streak, sometimes even if I am in the middle of a win streak, I often do very experimental and weird things. I don't always, like, consider losing a run to be a failure. Like, sometimes I just want to like try to lean into a certain set of cards and stuff, and sometimes they don't beat Guardian. Whoops. I think Guardian like got me for real though. At one point in the last 100 runs, sometimes your deck is really bad at the end of Act 1. Berserk. I'm pretty sure I transformed into Berserk here, but Berserk is a tricky card to get a lot of value out of because usually I want a card to make me stronger the turn I play it, and this one makes the enemies attack me for 50% more damage and doesn't do anything.
It's got that really nasty combo of immediate downside and delayed upside, which makes it so hard to take.
For sure. I do think that with Runic Pyramid, Berserk sometimes does okay even is pushing it. Sometimes Berserk isn't worse than Strike in my deck if I have a Runic Pyramid. And so I'm pretty sure that I transformed into it here and just ended up keeping it. But it's cool
it looks
that
like
Berserk featured in one of the runs.
If you're intangible via apparitions, then there's no downside to being vulnerable. That's the one way about it. You also have Clockwork Souvenir to block it later in the
Clockwork,
run.
Yeah, it's like a very, very late addition to the run here. This is a pretty cool deck, which I think ultimately mostly won because it had 174 HP when it entered the heart fight. It has a feed plus and a runic pyramid, so anytime you do that on Ironclad, you just sort of reach a state where it doesn't really matter that much if your deck is bad, because like enemies aren't going to deal like 150 damage to you really.
No, I've had a lot of runs like this, and some of them beat the heart taking like 20 damage. Some of them beat the heart taking 120 damage, but in the end,
Yeah.
they all win.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think I've had one Ironclad run in my life where I lost with more than like 120 max HP, and that deck was really bad. Um, it's really enlightening to me sometimes, actually, because you'll get into the heart fight with a deck that would have died earlier, this way, just because you had such a huge max HP buffer that your poor deck manages to survive that long, and you end up fighting the heart with it, and you get to see what a deck does against the heart, which usually would have just died earlier. Anyway, this one's
Yeah, it's
actually like
pretty cool.
I had double Whirlwind, Chemex, and Shuriken, and I had a lot of exhaust to get me down to a point where I was drawing both of those Whirlwinds every turn and just Chemexing both of them. And then I have Nunchaku here as well, so I could like Chemex a Whirlwind for 0, have Nunchaku gain me an energy, and then Pommel Strike Plus to get both of them back. So 8 energy from Chemex in one turn
I
was
love that.
happening fairly regularly at the end of this run. Yeah, I don't like it's not that hard a synergy to find once you have the stuff available to you to build it, but I don't remember ever using it before, which is just like that's such a cool thing about this game, that you can constantly find new things to do. Even if you're not really looking for them, it will just sort of give them to you, and as long as you're willing to let it, you can end up doing lots of cool stuff. This deck also has 1,000 cuts. Maybe one thing that will come out of this call is that you will it will strengthen you to take 1,000 cuts more often
I
on
hope so. I hope it
Silent.
does. Was this another Slime Boss Act 1, 1,000 cuts, or did you take it after?
This is Slime Boss in Act 1, and I
Okay.
was offered 1,000 cuts on floor 8. So I think in
that
this
happened
run you
2
would
silent runs
probably.
back to back? That's funny.
Well, the previous one was Hexaghost, not Slime Boss,
Oh,
actually. I just really wanted 1,000 cuts.
I can see why.
This, I would say, is a semi-typical, very strong silent deck to me. Double calculated gamble, double adrenaline. When you have those cards, you are just going to be able to put everything in play on turn 1 a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And you just need something to put in play on turn 1. And in this run, the stuff I have to play on turn 1 is kind of weird. Like, I have an accuracy plus, but I don't actually generate any shivs.
Well, there's
I
one Blade
transformed
Dance.
into that with Frozen Egg. Oh, there's a Blade Dance, okay. So I generate
Yeah.
some shivs. I don't generate 0 shivs. I'm pretty sure that did I take that? Anyway, regardless, it's not an incredible accuracy plus. But this deck is just going to use Reflex and Tactician with Calculated Gamble to play a billion cards every turn, and that'll win.
Yeah, I see a lot of successful silent runs that look like this. Two energy relics from bosses, lots of card draw, gambles, acrobatics, and then lots of powers and stuff. That tends to
Yeah.
work quite well.
I would say that those are like the 2 main axes that I see Silent winning off of are her incredible powers, and like the furthest you can get on that axis is like having a footwork plus and a nightmare and just very slowly making 12 dexterity from those 2 cards, and then you win. And then the other axis is her acceleration, and the furthest you can get on that axis is like there was a run recently where I made 300 block by playing 400 plus cards on turn 1 of the heart fight and just won off that block with calipers. And my deck didn't have a footwork in it. It didn't have an abacus in it. The reason I had to do that on turn 1 was that once I became frail, I wasn't going to be able to make block anymore. But I just like was gaining 2 block every now and then with Survivor, and that was that. And I played 400 plus cards on turn 1, and I also applied 200 poison to the heart, so that was a 3-turn. Is it a 0 damage 3-turn heart kill? I don't know. But anyway, that'll happen. This is a defect deck with a runic capacitor, which is always super exciting to me. I really like being able to do fun things with orbs and defect, and one of the tricky things is where you get your orb slots from. And so capacitor you have to draw and play. Capacity Potion is enough for one fight, but you only get it to use it once. So anytime that I have Runic Capacitor, sorry, on a defect run, I'm very excited. It lets you prioritize the cards that generate good orbs more heavily and not worry as much about getting your orb slots into play as quickly.
And I see.
Fission for me,
Yeah, I was just about to mention that fission. That looks like it was doing a lot of work.
so what was it, like 3.5 years ago, Crimson Blur went 10-0 on defect for the first time, and he very, very strongly believed that you just took the cards that were good on turn one, that drew you cards on turn one, and scaled your orbs defensively, and you needed like a Doom and Gloom or something, and that would kill every enemy in the game. Which I think is true, and for the most part,
Doom and Gloom kills everything.
Yeah, I went 10-0 playing defect, like very similarly to how he played defect. I think he developed his defect style by looking at how I played defect, and um, refining is a good word for it, but also like exaggerating it. Like he saw that I was really valuing getting blocks set up on turn 1 and 2 and stuff, and he was just like, I had these anchors in my brain where I was like, but there are other cards that are good too that I should take some time. And he looked at how I was playing defect and was like, actually no, the thing you're doing that's strong is this. I'm going to do only it. And did very, very well with it. And then I watched him doing that and I was like, oh, whoa, that's cool. And then I went even further into it. And so now I'm at a point where Fission for me is maybe the strongest defect rare at this point because of what happens if you have 4 cool-headeds and a fission in your deck.
Yeah. If you're 4 cool-headeds and a fusion and a fission, gonna be good.
And I've had multiple defect runs recently where I've taken Strange Spoon for it. Because if you don't exhaust your fission, you get to play it more than one time on turn a lot of the time. And those runs are ludicrous. But like Hologram will get it back, or failing that, you will just draw your entire deck and go through it a second time.
Beautiful.
So this is a really sweet defect run like that. Watcher, this was a really cool Watcher run because Battle Hymn Plus actually did a ton here. And Battle Hymn is a slow card. A lot of Watcher decks do not need to win slowly because they win quickly.
Yeah, ultimately, a lot of Watcher cards that say do this next turn or do something one time per turn end up kind of falling flat because you don't really take that many turns.
Exactly. Yes. But this run didn't get a rushdown until floor 54, and so until then, it was just trying to do a lot of stuff every turn, and Battle Hymn was a lot of my damage for a lot of the run. It also like doesn't have a ton of great stance swapping stuff and everything. It's a different type of Watcher deck from what I'm used to winning as. All right, we don't need to talk about Watcher that much though.
Looks pretty solid.
This is an Ironclad run that started with Disarm, which is always really interesting to me because Disarm is not very good against Gremlin or Sentries, but it's such a strong Ironclad card that I usually at least feel like I'm making a decision with Disarm on floor 1 against Hero is against a Wild Strike, so that's like a pretty decent Act 1 damage common. I don't know.
I think I'm okay now never taking a Wild Strike.
Oh, never a Wild Strike.
Never.
I certainly don't think it's Ironclad's best damage common by any stretch of the imagination, but I have definitely taken it to upgrade it to have something that deals 17 for 1 to kill Gremlin Nob.
Yeah, if you need a Gremlin Nob answer, it does work. I will begrudgingly admit this. It plays nicely with Bash too. It's not bad.
Yes, I also definitely value the Ironclad damage cards that cost 0 or 1 going through Act 1 with Bash. Definitely helps a lot. I was curious where I got Demon Form here. I got Demon Form from the Slavers Elite on floor 25 in this run. Because I don't do the strength thing on Ironclad very often at all, but I believe here I have a Magic Flower already, and I picked up a Reaper later, if I remember right. But I think looking at the Demon Form, I was like, I haven't quite solved the Act 2 boss yet. I have a Choker this run, so the Infinite isn't really available. Demon form opens up an easy win for me off of her later,
Yeah.
and I might as well just take it.
Demon form is a huge pick for me with Velvet Choker and Ironclad specifically. It's
Yeah,
just so much value
yeah.
per cards played.
Yes, exactly. Velvet Choker changes card evaluations a decent amount. What was your question you were going to?
Oh, I was gonna ask. I guess in this run specifically, how did your bash get upgraded? Because I was gonna ask, do you upgrade bash much these days?
I definitely upgrade Bash sometimes. If I upgrade Bash, it is generally because I haven't found a great way to deal damage something that will kill an Act 1. So it's not an upgrade that I make thinking, oh, this will be great throughout the run. It is just you need to collect some things that will kill your Act 1 elite on
Yeah.
floor 7 or 8 or whatever, and upgrading Bash better than upgrading Strike, at least. Most of the time.
Most of the time.
Usually. So that's what happened here. I had a clothesline in my deck and a feel no pain as I went into the campfire before the Act 1 Elite. I had
Oh.
disarm, clothesline, feel no pain. So I can upgrade clothesline there, but I think bash is sensible. I also
Yeah.
did have 73 out of 73 health, so I wasn't like in super heavy amounts of danger. I've actually lost my last 2 Ironclad runs to sentries, which is
Tough.
like the first time it was metallicizing super elite sentries, and that's rare. That's a bad elite. But the second time was just like regular sentries, and I thought my deck killed them, and then I didn't win. Which sentries give you so many dazes. There's so much variance in the second half of the fight. And there's variance in whether you draw your damage cards in a way that easily starts killing them in the first deck cycle.
Huh.
So it'll happen sometimes, I guess.
I guess.
All right. This is another silent run with like adrenaline and sundial, and in this one I didn't get the acrobatics that I usually love to get, so I had to make do with double tools of the trade, double reflex, and predator. But I mean, I made do basically.
Yeah. First 2
This-
relics, Shuriken Tingsha looks pretty fun actually.
yeah, and I have double blade dance in this deck, so that's a decent amount of damage. Shuriken and Kunai have definitely gone down in evaluation for me in silent runs a massive, massive, massive amount. It used to be that like Kunai was the relic you wanted to see on Ascension 15, I felt like.
Definitely.
And nowadays, like I
You
just
take every
don't
cloak and
really
dagger.
care a lot of the time. Right, nowadays, even if I have a kunai, I still don't take Cloak and Dagger. Whereas it used to be like, I will take Cloak and Dagger to make sure my kunai wins if I find it. So the amount that I've moved away from that little synergistic space is pretty dramatic to me. This was an interesting silent run because I just very, very heavily was struggling to find card draw for a lot of the run, and I just had to make do with reflexes eventually, but they worked. Reflexes, and I think the Predator is actually a late addition, which is Predator is such an interesting card because I will usually take it in Act 1 because it's a very good damage card in Act 1, but I also sometimes have runs where card draw is so important late game that I'm okay with paying 2 energy for 2 cards next turn. That's just like an okay trade.
That's kind of how I feel about Wheel Kick on Watcher a little bit. It's a very similar card, actually, right? Identical
Yeah.
damage, this turn draw,
Yeah,
next turn draw.
very similar.
Very, very rarely, but sometimes my Watcher run needs draw enough that Wheel Kick is like, hey, that's pretty good. And there was even one time, going back to Enlightenment as a card, I think I made a double Wheel Kick Enlightenment Sundial Infinite,
That's really
which
cool.
was pretty funny.
Yeah. Yeah, they're both cards where like there's a strong reason to take them, which is at its most relevant in Act 1 and then becomes less relevant. And there's a different strong reason to take them, which is at its least relevant in Act 1 and then becomes very relevant later, potentially. Although often you'll have gotten card draw some other way that's better by the time you reach that point of the run.
I really
This run
like
was
that kind of mechanical pairing in Slay the Spire on so many cards in their core design.
Yeah,
You've
it's
got
really
this
cool.
numeric effect that has value early on, most importantly, and then a secondary effect that has value late on, most importantly.
Yeah, this run was 3 hours and 17 minutes long, which I think
Ooh.
might have been the longest run of the streak.
I think that's longer than any of mine.
I definitely. I usually Okay, back in the day, I used to play like 4 hours was sort of where I was aiming. If I was around about 10 or better in a win streak on any of the characters rotating, I like very deliberately. The way, if you want to think about, if you think that you can improve your win rate by spending longer on a run, which is something you might think about yourself or might not, it's not necessarily true that that's the case, but maybe you do, and I did at the time. And you want to generate lots of win streaks, which again I wanted to at the time, but you certainly don't have to want that. Um, Something that makes sense to do is to play runs pretty quickly when you don't have a win streak, and to spend a lot more time and energy on the you do have a win streak. And so I used to be a lot more extravagant with that. I was like playing hour to an hour and a half long runs with no wins, and playing 4 to 6 hour runs when I did have ones. Nowadays, I just don't do that as much anymore. I think for me, it's always been interesting to play runs in different ways. It's just like fun to play a fast run sometimes and a slow run sometimes. And win streaks used to be my justification for playing a slow run. But as I've matured as a player and a streamer, I've started to realize that like sometimes I just feel like playing a slow run, and I'll play the slow run that. So my slowest run is like a 12-hour long defect run, where I actually at some point opened a software development tool and started writing simulators for my deck. That was a really, really fun thing to do. And then I also did like a floor per day Ironclad
Yes.
run
I was going to mention your
like
floor per day.
floor 13 or something, where my rule was I had to spend an hour every floor, and I just had to find something to analyze for an hour. Even if it's like a campfire where I'm very clearly upgrading a particular card, I still have to analyze for an hour every floor. That's the rule. And that was really fun. But yeah, generally when I'm in a win streak, I just sort of do my normal play, and I'm okay with losing a win streak because I decided to play a 2-hour run instead of an 8-hour run. I don't feel bad about that at this point in my life.
Yeah, I don't think you should. There's always the opportunity to get a new one, after all.
Yeah. Yeah, and it happens. Will continue to happen. The runs where you start with fairly poor relics and then get a runic pyramid are some of my favorite runs to play in Slay the Spire. I'm not sure they're necessarily the runs to play in Slay the Spire, but for me, the coolest feeling, we're looking at the defect run now, the coolest feeling for me is feeling like you're behind going into Act 2 and seeing your deck turn the corner. I think that was a much more pronounced feeling in Slay the Spire for me, like back in the day on earlier balance patches where win rates were much lower. Act 2 was much more threatening. Cards available in Act 1 were much worse. And so you'd sometimes just see your deck really struggle through Act 2 and survive fights with like less than 5 HP multiple times in a row, and then you like get that one event and boom, all of a sudden you're a late game deck and you win. And I kind of feel like the bad relics in Act 1 into Runic Pyramid runs resemble that a little bit. Here I had an Apotheosis, which, yeah, I never dropped below 56 health in Act 2, so maybe
like
not very
Pyramid.
relevant for this run, but
Pyramid with boot
Runic
sequence
Pyramid's really
plus,
strong.
yeah.
Pyramid with boot
I
sequence
love
plus,
boot sequence
exactly.
pyramid.
Yeah. This is a messy, messy Watcher run. And this Watcher run is sort of like, it is my belief that this sort of Watcher deck with double Omniscience and 4 Talk to the Hands and 2 Mental Fortresses and 29 cards is much, 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 much harder to play correctly than with like Rush Down, Mental Fortress, and 3 Scrolls and 6 other cards. Like, a deck like this is just going to be weird to play. In this run, I struggled very heavily to get relevant card draw and relics early on. It looks like Mummified Hand's a really strong relic, but if you look at my deck, I just didn't have many powers. It was very hard for me to work out how to block for a really, really long time. And at the end of Act 3, I like took a Foresight Plus because I was like, well, there are like 2 cards in my deck that I'm going to need to find. And I have a Mummified Hand, I guess. And then I took a Talk to the Hand Plus on floor 42, a Talk to the Hand unupgraded on floor 44, a Talk to the Hand unupgraded on floor 45,
Oh, it all
Mental
came together
Fortress
last minute.
upgraded on floor 46,
Yeah.
bought a Mental Fortress on floor 47, um, and then went into the boss fights, where I started the boss fights with 7 HP in this run at the end of
Wow.
Act 3. My deck was very, 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 very bad and got bailed out at the end, which is like, I actually lost my previous win streak to a Watcher run. Watcher runs, when you win, are very samey, but the Watcher runs where you have to, like, where the card rewards and the enemies in the Spire force you to deviate away from the real win that's available to Watcher's card pool, get so, like, complicated and weird sometimes.
Yeah, no kidding.
Anyway, this was a cool Watcher run.
Yeah,
Sure.
Foresight is a cool card, particularly in conjunction with Omniscience. I don't know if you ended up using the Omniscience on the Foresight in this run, but I've had quite a bit of
Yes, I
success.
absolutely did.
Yeah, I've had quite a bit of success
And
doing that. Scrying like 10 cards every turn. You just pick the 5 that you want to draw
yeah,
and make block that way.
for sure. I also have a Golden Eye, which means that when I was scrying at 2 additional cards. There's lots of interesting things in a deck like this where you make sure that you end with 0 cards in your draw pile or lots of cards in your draw pile, because if you have like 4 cards in your draw pile, your scry for 12 at the start of next turn is going to be a lot less relevant.
Oh yeah, I've made the mistake of playing Tantrum with no cards in the draw pile and then scrying
Yep.
it. Oof.
Yes,
Not fun.
that's rough. Also, anytime you have double Omniscience and Wish, you get to play the fun mini game of trying to Omniscience your Wish without losing the fight. Like, how am I going to get 60 gold here without dying?
Good old
And
Omniscience.
I mean, one of the reasons that I won this game was that when I entered my store on floor 47, I had 800 gold. So I bought Mental Fortress, Panic Button, Warpaint, Fire Potion, Bottled Miracle. And I had 7 health before then, and then I entered 7 health. But all of that stuff helped me out a lot for winning.
Scrappy, I like it.
Yeah, this is such a weird Ironclad run. Ironclad to me is the character where when I look at my decks, it's like I entered a fugue state for 2 or 3 hours and I have no idea what happened. And I guess I won.
Yeah, it's always this big pile of 30 plus cards.
Yeah, and I have certainly had Ironclad runs that aren't that, but for me, it's weird. I feel very comfortable understanding how a silent defense or watcher deck consistently wins without bloating with value cards, I guess, early on in runs. But I do not have a comfortable way to do that on Ironclad yet, and perhaps other people have worked it out, but I tend to try to explore strategy spaces on my own. So I haven't like gone and looked.
I haven't seen anyone do it.
Yeah. Maybe there's some way that someone will work it out at some point, but yeah, for now, it feels like my Ironclad decks fill up with a lot of weird cards, and then weird things happen. I don't.
But sometimes
I
it's
don't.
winning, and that's good.
Yeah, a lot of the time it's winning.
Yeah.
I did get a lot of runic pyramids in this set of runs. So looking at the silent run next, this is like a dream silent run for me. This is what I want every silent run to be.
Yeah, you've got
Maybe
Toxic
a little
Egg,
short on energy.
2 eggs, Pandora's Box, Runic Pyramid, Pellets, Preserved Insect, Kuna. Yeah, that's pretty perfect.
Yep, and double adrenaline plus 4 acrobatics, a tactician plus double prepared plus. So this deck is maybe missing one more energy card, away from just being able to do everything on turn 1 every time, basically.
Yeah, just missing a Tactician.
And it used to be that I took a Predator on floor 1, which I think has to be very, very high, like most important card to see on floor 1 for Silent. Maybe not most important because it's like an often, but like the card I am happiest to see on floor 1.
Yeah.
So happy to see a Predator on floor 1.
Might rate Terror higher, but not much higher.
And then by the time that I was at floor 6, I also had an acrobatics and a sneaky strike, which I upped. So that's one of the huge things for me about the buffs to silence discard strategies. I think that okay, so for me, I used to love the balance of silent very much. I thought that silent had a direct damage package of cards like dagger sprays and shivs and stuff like that, which were strong in the first half of the run, and you'd usually want or have to take some of those cards in order to survive the first half of the run. And then she also had this really interesting poison package, and that damage better later on in the run and had some combo elements to it and also scaling over time, which is very good for the boss gauntlet. And she had a discard package, and that was good later on in the run because card draw becomes more important later in the run. You have more cards you draw and play. You can match acrobatics to reflex or tactician easily and stuff like that, right?
That's right.
And I thought that made silent runs really interesting to play because I have a deck with a few dagger sprays and other damage commons in it, and then I try to work out sense for the end of the run. And nowadays it's just like the stuff is so strong that you don't need the direct damage necessarily ever. You can just start building your late game deck on floor 0. And that's what I've been doing with a lot of success on silent recently. And it just kind of feels wrong, like by buffing, because a bunch of the like shiv stuff and direct damage stuff got buffed, and then at the same time or later, a bunch of the stuff all got buffed, and
Yeah, there were
also
buffs
like
to
corpse explosion happened.
eviscerate and reflex and slice and blade
Yep.
dance and
And it feels like
couple others.
by buffing cards that weren't seeing play so that they can see play, like if you're not recognizing where their spot in the character's like arc through a run was, you risk making them way too prominent and having them overcrowd the strategic space and get rid of a lot of the other cards that used to be getting picked all the time because they needed to be, but now you just don't need them. That's kind of how I feel about silent right now. Where like, yeah, it used to be like Sneaky Strike was like, oh, this is like a really weird card because I can just never put support for Sneaky Strike fast enough for the damage to it to matter. Like it's a very hard card to justify taking because like you sort of need to have acros and prepare carding a card this turn consistently, and by that point you don't. But nowadays it's like, oh, floor 1 Sneaky Strike.
Why not?
Hell yeah.
Yeah, give it to me.
So it's a very different feeling.
Yeah, she's
And
definitely
then
changed a lot, this character, with
yeah,
time.
she really has. That was 17 runs in a row.
Yeah,
Then I died as defect.
very incredible streak you had.
Yeah, I guess so. It's a lot of runs. My defect loss, I do generally think that the losses are often the most interesting parts of the streak, but I think this defect loss I actually dug with shovel, which is not something
No,
I do
I
very
can
often.
believe it.
Like, there's a huge meme on my channel around shovel. There used to be runs where if I got everybody just loved it, and I enjoyed it, and right, but I was going to do it. And then more and more, I felt like targeting upgrades at the right cards was just more valuable than relics, especially when your deck gets smaller and more deliberate. The value of a relic goes down, and the value of an upgrade on one of the vital cards goes up. And so, as the game changed and I got more focused in how I was building decks, the idea of digging just got worse. But here, I actually just like felt like digging was correct. Or maybe I just really wanted to, so I did it. I definitely could have upgraded Soulcast instead of digging. And there were like maybe 3 mistakes I identified. This entire series of runs. So like I said, sometimes I like to play slow, sometimes I like to play fast. And I decided that I wanted to track my mistakes for a while in a spreadsheet. And this entire series of runs basically started the exact moment that I did that. So I had 2 runs before I started tracking mistakes in a spreadsheet, and I started tracking mistakes in a spreadsheet, and I just won 15 runs in a row. And
Power of a
one
little
of the really
introspection.
yeah, but one of the really interesting things about that is you might think like, oh, so by tracking your mistakes, you made it so you weren't making mistakes and paying attention. And you might think like, oh, you won 17 runs in a row. good at this game, and like, is it still fun for you? Like, it seems like it must be super easy. But there are like at least 100 mistakes I noted in that spreadsheet over over 15 runs.
Yeah,
So so no. Not, and those are only the mistakes I noticed, right?
right.
Like you don't.
Surely there's a few that slipped through the cracks too.
Yeah, but often, I mean, at the start, I was still very much in the mindset of like, oh, we just vibe and play Slay the Spire, you know? And so I was noting things like, oh, I could have taken a different run to get Nunchaku to 9 at the end of this fight. And as I got further into the streak and I was focusing very hard on those, got to a point where I was like very intuitively doing things like extending fights for 3 turns to get Nunchaku to 9, which is like a consequence of forcing yourself to examine your mistakes as you start actually trying not to make them anymore. But I was still making lots of mistakes, lots of other mistakes. And as you realize that you're making mistakes, you other ones. Um, yeah, there's so much going on in this game. So much.
So much. Yeah, I don't think anybody makes it through a run of Ascension 20 Slay the Spire without making a mistake somewhere.
I have played a Watcher run where I couldn't find a mistake I made and I won. But on the other hand,
Dun dun dun.
like I just got rushed down Fear No Evil inner peace at the start of the run. So so like you know,
Hmm.
I have played with those cards a lot of times before. I feel very comfortable with them, and Watcher's fights can end on like turn 1 or 2. And while she's very complicated to play with a complex deck, when your deck is like only 8 different cards, there aren't that many choices anymore. So I'm sure I made some mistake in there and just didn't find it, but I didn't find it as I was doing it. I have also strangely had losses. Find a mistake I made. But that's a lot easier because like if you die on floor 7 to Gremlin Knob, sometimes it's just yeah, I'm comfortable that I should have tried to kill this elite, but a bash was my 11th card, and I drew 5 strikes one hand and 5 defends the other one. Whoops.
Oops. Yeah, it happens to the best of us. Gremlin Knob takes his toll from everyone.
It'll happen. All right.
Such a tricky dude.
Shall we look at some of your runs?
Yeah, let's switch over looking at my runs. All right, so looking at the first run here, Silent was the first of the victories. I don't have a whole lot to say about this one. This was a very, very strong Silent run. First relic Kunai, second relic Toxic Egg. So it got...
That's so much fun.
Yeah, it got really out of control very quickly. We ended up with multiple calculated gambles, upgraded reflex, upgraded tactician, lots of 4 upgraded prepareds, just cycling through the whole deck pretty much every turn, destroying everything. There was Kunai Shuriken Ninja Scroll, lots of shivs. Really, really fun, but not a whole lot of decision making to talk about too much on this one.
Yeah. I love that prepared is good now because I never used to feel like it was, and it's such a cool card to have be good.
Very much so. Yeah, it's such a basic card. Yeah, like draw 2, discard 2. It's not actually directly doing anything, but it's helping you sift through the deck to get to the good
and
stuff.
It's a support common for what the character wants to do, and it used to feel kind of bad that the amount of the time you wanted to take Snekko Eye and the amount of time that you just died to Chosen Hallway Fight in Act 2 or Snekko Hallway Fight in Act 2 or Time Eater or Choker or something like that meant that taking Prepared in Act 1 just felt wrong. But nowadays it feels right, which that is a nice thing about the balance, I guess.
Yeah, I'm usually not taking Prepareds in Act 1 unless I took an Eviscerate. But Act 2, I take a lot of them.
I like Prepared in Act 1. I solve the latter half of the run in a way that Prepared is good so much that the fact that it's like not great against Gremlin Knob just isn't enough to not take it anymore.
Yeah, that makes total sense. But yeah, that was just fun. Not a whole lot of strategy to talk about, but super fun. So second run of the sequence, Defect here. Defect was also super fun. You were talking about Runic Capacitor being one of your favorites on Defect. How about Runic Capacitor plus Frozen Core from the first boss, so that I was getting free Frost Orbs every turn.
I like never take frozen core.
It's one of my favorite relics design wise. I think it's really underpowered most of the time, but does enable some really cool deck building. I like that it lets you have a deck that's just orb scaling and like attacks, and then all of the block comes from your free frost orb generation.
Sure.
That's not what ended up happening here. This run was weird. Something that was quite notable. I gave my very first attack card, Beam Cell, to Ranwid to get an old coin right at the start. And then, because I was short a card, I ended up picking up Hello World on floor 4. And that Hello
Oh.
World helped me get through Act 1.
I love it when Hello World does work.
Yeah. Yeah. And then this run turned super strong. We got Mummified Hand, Strange Spoon, Ritual Dagger. Oh, yeah. This was like 100 Ritual Dagger damage run, too.
That's
I think
very cool.
I think I just stabbed the Spire Spear. And this was also a run that upgraded all of its cards with Mark of the Bloom. Got like 20 free upgrades there.
Also very cool.
Yeah. So this was a super strong defect.
So we both had a Mark of the Bloom run.
Yeah. I might have even had 2. I'll have to look.
Nice. Yeah.
All right.
I like the Ritual Dagger on defect for the Act 4 Elite fight very specifically because I do feel like there are a decent chunk of defect decks which like cruise through everything in the game except for turn 2 and 3 of the Act 4 Elite and the Heart fight.
Yes.
And
I have seen many players on other streams and even by my own stream defect runs that are so strong, and then they just fall completely flat in Act 4 because they cannot deal with the elites.
Yep. And Ritual Dagger is one way to do that. And I mean, I have designed the entire way I'm playing the entire character around that turn, basically. So
yeah, makes total sense. This was also a run where I got a lot of use out of Fission, because once I got rid of the orbs, they regenerated as free frost orbs, which is kind of cool.
For sure.
All right, number 3, the Watcher run.
You have a Prismatic Shard on Watcher, Baylor? Do we need to
I have two Prismatic Shards in this win streak, actually.
But I assumed they were like not on Watcher. Is her card pool not strong enough for you, Baalorlord?
Meteor Strike is not a Watcher card. You know, look at his run history. I needed that Meteor Strike.
It
gave me back 4 energy instantly.
That is pretty good. Did you ever recycle the Meteor Strike? That's one of the like hidden synergies I really enjoy in this game.
I might have. Yeah, I might have. Looking at the run history. Let's see. This was... I did take damage to Heart. Shield and Spear was 0 damage 2 turns, so I must have done something really good there.
It is very believable that this deck could do something really good. There are quite a lot of very strong cards in this one. I love that you have Exhume and Meteor Strike and Recycle, and then your silent card is like Acrobatics, and it's like, well, actually, yeah, that's about the same power level. This like unupgraded common. That seems good too.
Yeah, this was pretty busted. When did I pick up the shard? This was Act 3. Yeah, it looks like sometime in Act 3.
Back in the day, you were part of the charity week I ran back in the day, where I had a different streamer on my channel with me every day, and we were raising money for international.
Yes. Oh my god, that was so long ago.
I played a run with one of the streamers that week where we bought Prismatic Shard, because we were on, I think, defect with Dead Branch, and he was like, well, we have to try to get Dead Branch corruption on defect, right? And as we bought it, I was like, so just to clarify, do you think this is actually a good decision? And he was like, no, I would rather throw the gold away. I would rather just get nothing for my gold.
Oh, man. Yeah. I buy Prismatic Shard partially because it leads me to unique runs like this one. Runs that I've never had in 6,000 hours of play are only things I can sometimes acquire by buying the Prismatic Shard.
Yeah.
So I sometimes do it for that reason. And what I found is that it's pretty fun.
It is.
I think it's quite good if you've got an attack-based build of any kind on any character because of the cross access you get to both Watcher stances if you're not Watcher or Strength if you are.
Yeah.
And I think that if you have Question Card, it's actually secretly kind of good.
Well,
The big thing,
Question
two
card
things I'll
and
point
prayer
out
wheel, I assume.
with Prismatic Shard that are secretly really good. One, it adds colorless cards to the card rewards, which are
Sure.
better on average than the regular cards.
Mhm.
And fun little fact, this is the only way to see a randomly upgraded colorless card. You can get offered an upgraded uncommon colorless at random with the Prismatic Shard.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, I guess otherwise you need eggs.
you need the egg appropriate otherwise, because you won't get random upgrades in the Act 3 event, the Sensory Stone. And of course, the rare colorless cards, since they're rares, they can't be randomly upgraded either when you see them.
Kind of unfair that the Sensory Stone can't randomly upgrade. I'd never
Yeah,
really thought about that before, but it seems like it's a card reward, right? But card rewards are meant to have a chance of rares, or sorry, of upgrades. Century Stone doesn't. It's interesting that colorless cards have no commons. So if you have a Prismatic Shard and you're expecting to see tons of colorless cards, you actually still need to roll an uncommon or rare to have a chance of.
Hmm. Yeah, I think you might be right. Now I'm wondering if it rolls rarity and then card or color.
I'm pretty sure it rolls rarity and then it rolls all of the out of
Huh.
all of the uncommons in the game. We'll
Yeah,
get one.
interesting.
I'm almost certain.
All right. Well, I want to talk about this silent run next, actually, because this was a really. Or wait, no,
We're
watch
looking
your
at the.
Ironclad. Silent is
Oh,
after that. Ironclad next. Excuse me.
yes. Okay,
Skipping
gotcha.
over a little bit. This was a boss swap. I've come around a little bit more to the boss swap, particularly on the Ironclad. For a long
I used
time,
to like Boss Up on Ironclad once upon a time.
yeah. I've waffled back and forth on it. I look at the Burning Blood and I see it heals way over 100, and I have a really hard time justifying giving that up in Act 1. But I also feel like Ironclad can perform so much better with more energy per turn.
Yeah, Ironclad has so many 2-cost cards and a 2-cost starter card. So
Yeah, and that's exactly what this deck did, is fill the deck with high cost cards and then use Velvet Choker. Excuse me. So this we just talked about Demon Form with Velvet Choker Ironclad. That was the star of the show here, was Demon Form plus um Runic Pyramid Apparitions and Brimstone. So my goal was
oh, that's super
basically
cool.
be intangible for 4 turns and then heavy blade stuff to death with a bajillion strength. It was
You've
Vajra, Demon
got a
Form
Lizard Tail
plus
too.
Brimstone.
That's the latest Brimstone I think I've ever. I've definitely won Brimstone runs, but it's been something that I've pushed into very early in like Act 1
Yeah,
sort of idea.
this was an unusual Brimstone run. I don't usually pick it up without like a lot of feed HP or a disarm or two, but I figured the apparitions would be enough, and it worked out.
Yeah. It's like it is surprising how little it exception parts multi-attack with if you have apparitions at the right time, that's no longer a thing. So
Yeah, no problem. Easy, easy, easy.
the yeah, I used to think that there was somewhere percent chance of boss swapping on Ironclad at the start of every run. Like not okay, I phrased that wrong. I used to think that it was correct to boss swap on Ironclad somewhere between 20% of the time, but that was my level of confidence, which is not high.
Can you say that
I
percent range again? You just cut out very briefly there.
20 and 80.
20 to 80. Got it.
So I was confident you shouldn't never do it, and I was confident you should do it literally every time, but I had absolutely no confidence in between whatsoever. And eventually I just stopped boss swapping because I don't enjoy find it like boring to play a broken Pandora's box deck starting from floor 1 these days, so I don't.
I can see
But
that.
yeah.
I can see that. I can find a lot of fun in those runs, but I could absolutely see how you might find them uninteresting, especially if you thought they were like a foregone conclusion of some kind.
Yeah. They were fun for the first while, but it was sort of like Dead Branch, where like the first few times you get like Dead Branch corruption, it's like, oh, this is really cool. Time you get it, it's like I cannot possibly lose. I am clicking cards for the next 45 minutes until I win, which
Clicky
is
clicky.
Yeah, I mean, I love this game. I love so many things about this game. It's just that one is one that I've gotten bored
Yeah.
of. So,
Well, let's talk about this next silent run then, because the silent was about the opposite of a foregone conclusion.
all right.
So, silent number 5. Definitely one of the most memorable runs for me. So here's a pop quiz for you, Jorbs.
Yes.
You start out floor 1 as silent. You take a bonus that doesn't affect your starting combat. So it's your starting deck against Jawworm. You
Okay.
draw
Yep.
3 strikes, 2 defends, Survivor, Ascender's Bane on turn 1.
Okay.
And
Yep.
Jawworm is attacking for 12. What do you do? Basically, you have only 3 options: strike, defend, Survivor, strike,
Yep.
Survivor, or 3 strikes.
And the remainder of my deck is strike, 3 defend. Is that correct?
And neutralize. That's right. Or 2 defends, because you've got 3
Strike, 2 defend, neutralize.
That's right.
How much health does the Jawworm has?
49, let's say.
49.
Fairly low roll.
Can it
I
have
don't
that
actually
high?
remember. I don't actually remember what the Jawworm
I
health
thought
was for
like
this fight.
46 was.
40.
So I mean, the obvious
Average.
options are strike, Survivor, or strike.
Yeah.
This is the choice. And so the question is, am I spending 4 health to deal 6 damage there? No, I don't think I am. I think it's just Survivor, defend, strike for me.
That's the choice I made, and that was the wrong choice.
Yeah.
That was
Did
the
you
very wrong choice.
solve it afterwards to confirm that it was the wrong choice, or
So what
did
happened
you
was
get
that
really unlucky?
I drew neutralize, strike, triple defend during a buff turn 3 times in a
Yep.
row, and
That-
I took 47 damage to this Jawworm.
That
on floor
might
1.
be like. That might just be what's meant to happen against Jawworm on floor 1 sometimes, though. Like, if you draw that, I don't think you have to beat yourself up for that. Because giving up 4 health, like, how likely is it you draw triple defend, neutralize 3 times in a row while it's buffing? It's like not likely,
Not
right?
particularly likely, but there was an important heuristic that I learned in the aftermath of this run. I'd call this sort of a minute improvement to my opening combat play. And
Okay.
the rule that I learned was that if Silent draws 3 strikes against Jawworm turn 1 with the starter deck, you must play 2 of them. This was articulated actually to
Oh.
me by a chat member. They'd done some more crunching on it, but essentially, if you're missing too many strike plays, if you skip 2 strikes on turn 1
What
as
was
Silent.
Did they solve that? Like, did they actually? Because people can solve floor 1 fights with starter decks at this point.
Yes, I think the fight is solved for the lower ascensions where you don't have the Ascender's Bane, but with the
Okay.
Ascender's Bane and you have that like 1 extra card that gets cycled without being drawn, it gets really complicated and tough to solve. But
So, in that solution, are they like, how are they evaluating taking 47 versus taking 4? How much worse is it to take 47 compared to how bad it is to take 4?
I think it's got to be that your odds of taking more than 4 are above 50%. I don't know how to articulate this mathematically to the
Well,
level of detail you'd like, I think, at this time
yeah,
of night.
because to solve that situation, you have to solve Slay the Spire, which we haven't done.
Right.
Because you're talking about very different distributions of damage. You're talking about taking 4 consistently versus sometimes, but sometimes saving 4 health. And so that'll like depend on pathing and stuff. I see in this run that you went to a Lee's waffle or whatever it's
Yes,
called.
I ended up buying a Lee's waffle on floor 5, which brought me back
Yeah.
up to full health, and then
It may be that the fact that you could go to a store on floor 5 changed what your line is meant to be on floor 1 of that fight.
oh,
Because in the lines where you take 40 plus, you have an out to full heal.
That's-
And like, I think it's probably pretty close. And the solution of the remainder of the game is probably significant enough to matter in a situation like that.
yeah, I believe that.
We've worked out a way that your play was right.
I like
Mm.
it. Thank
You
you.
could sleep well at
Our
night.
play, because you chose that line too, so we're both committed together that was the
Yeah.
correct play. The Jawworm seems
I-
to have disagreed, but the Jawworm's wrong.
The Jawworm's dead, and you
Jawworm's,
won.
yeah, I murdered that
So,
Jawworm, and then I murdered
yeah.
the heart.
exactly.
So, and actually, so the other thing I want to
I
mention with
love,
this run,
I can I love that we talked about the turning the corner thing, where it's just like you're falling behind in Act 2 and everything, and like I'm really falling behind against this jaw worm. I needed to turn the corner.
needed a way to catch up.
Yeah.
Yeah, this run almost died several times. Let's see. Let's see. Low health. I went to 12 health against Jawworm. I lost 40 health against Lagavulin after buying the waffle, so I went immediately back down to half. I went to 11 health against Slime Boss. I went to 15 health against Shield Parasite, and then 9 health against Bronze Automaton. And then once I got to Act 3, everything was fine. Mostly. Yeah, had an easy heart fight because we got like tough bandages suddenly in Act 3, and that changed everything. But I almost died in Act 1 and 2. So the other thing I wanted to mention with this run is sort of your morale, your spirits, your mood. I actually started this run talking about how your confidence in your play affects your ability to actually succeed. And then I
Sure.
immediately run into a situation where I get completely obliterated by the first enemy in the game. And I think many people would be reasonably justified in becoming infuriated at this point. But I managed to collect myself and just be like, okay, how do we move forward? Let's put that
You
behind us.
committed to your rogue line of
just-
playing strike, defend,
Yeah,
or strike, defend, survivor.
just keep going.
Decided to stick with it.
Yeah.
You're an experimental player, and you decided to take 0 instead of 4 on turn 1 of the Jawworm fight.
It was the wrong choice. Yeah, but next time I'll take the 4, though. That's what I learned.
I
Yeah.
don't know if I am convinced by our conversation that I would take 4 there yet.
Well, I hope you enjoy taking 47 to Jawworm in the future then.
We'll see.
It's going to happen to you.
See. Maybe I need to run a like Silent versus Jawworm stream one day. Just play the fight 100 times.
Yeah, just see what the best score the Jawworm gets is. It's funny.
Yeah, how many times does it kill me?
That's so funny. Wow. All right. We got a bunch more runs in this streak to go through. Let's cross a few more off. So, moving on to the defect that came after this. This was a boss swap defect that got a very early toxic egg. Let's see, did that come from the chest or the first elite? The chest. So, toxic egg in the middle of Act 1 happened here. And that turned into 40 card special, just like every card in the book, but notably 2 Meteor Strikes. We're talking about the breakability of Meteor Strike. Funnily enough, neither from my boss rewards. What was the first one?
Yeah, one. I also defect's the other character that I have boss swapped on the most. I also think that defect boss swap is probably correct somewhere between some percent of the time and some other percent of the time. Losing the lightning orb definitely makes your Act 1 elites a lot worse.
Yes, Gremlin Nub especially way scarier with a boss swap, and the extra energy doesn't always make up for it. The biggest problem I have with the boss swap on defect is if you draw dual cast turn 1, it does nothing.
Right. Yes, also compile driver gets much worse, which is ironic because your card draw commons are the things you want to be getting better if you're on 4 energy.
Yeah.
But you've made compile driver worse.
Compile driver being a lot weaker is definitely confusing.
On the other hand, defect has a fairly significant pool of useful value cards that get better on 4 energies. Reinforced body, what I was trying to say actually. Sunder becomes a lot better. Meteor Strike becomes a more present option. So there are lots of reasons to like the 4th energy.
Yeah, defect for me is a character that I don't find dependent upon energy relics because they have lots of cards that can make energy. But at the same time, they're very easily able to spend energy with many X-cost cards that are good, many high-cost cards that are good, and lots of card draw.
Yeah.
So energy is always welcome on the defect.
Yep.
And this run was certainly rich in energy.
Triple heat sinks, double meteor strike is like so much fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't even remember the triple heat sinks. I remember like deliberately drafting these towards the late game as part of my draw engine. Was this the run where
Yeah,
I did?
with so many energy creating cards, you're gonna be taking anything that draws you cards basically at
Yeah,
that point, right?
exactly. Yeah, it's just like whatever gets double meteor strike in play was kind of the line that I was thinking about with this one. Worked out really well. All right, Watcher. Watcher also had a big chonky deck, 33 cards. This was what was this? Cloak class wing boots, first two relics into Black Star into having just a ton of relics.
Is it a lesson learned that you remove? Is that how all the cards are upgraded?
Yes, I removed Lesson Learned Plus at floor 54. Yes, good question. Got a couple
Did you
Watcher runs
like
like that.
did you applaud somberly as it left the deck?
We give it a salute. Its duty is
Yeah.
done.
Yeah, goodbye.
Service has ended. Thank you, lesson learned.
We we respect you as a card that has contributed to the deck, but do not grant you the title of winning run history. Conclusion.
This was actually the run I was talking about. I'm sorry, it wasn't Enlightenment. This was Establishment,
Establishment meditate. Is it?
Meditate Madness with triple wheel kick and sundial.
Actually, do you have a meditate?
Um,
I don't think you do.
no, I don't.
It's like a
What's that
naked
establishment even
establishment.
doing? Oh, it's making Sands of Time super cheap.
Sure.
Is what it's doing, I guess. That's a weird run.
I like the like Sands of Time Vault synergy where the card is just like you can make it work. I think it's one of Watcher's worst damage cards, which I feel is in the window of I can work with this, but it's like right at the bottom. Um, it has cool interactions with like liquid memories, for example, and if you ever have Sands of Time's a lot better in that situation. But then if you get like 2 volts in your deck, all of a sudden it's just genuinely pretty good. I really like that about that card.
Yeah, I really like early game Sands of Time. Can be a very nice Act 1 solve, particularly for Gremlin Knob. So good.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I'll especially against Hexaghost, I feel like Watcher needs to have the guarantee damage for that
Yes.
fight. It's good against Lagavulin. Like I said, it's good with many, many different potions. It's just like I struggle to be excited about Watcher cards that aren't good when I'm getting attacked.
Yeah, it's not a card that's good on turn 1, which of course makes it
Yeah.
a little problematic.
Yeah. So one possible. I try to make my cards as good as possible on turn 1.
All right. So next run was Ironclad. This one was super easy. I boss swapped into Snekko Eye.
Oh,
and
yes.
then went double bludgeon, triple demon form. Double
yes.
whirlwind.
I enjoy the bludgeon demon form. I'm going to hit them. No, I'm going to hit them for 45.
Twice with double tap.
Yeah.
Bonk. Yeah, this was super fun. And 2 heavy blades too. Just like all the big blap cards and strength at the wazoo and just crushed everything to death. It was really, really good time. Really good time.
Strength Ironclad decks was your... Yeah, the other one had demon form too.
Yeah.
Demon form is 2-0 in this, well, kind of 4-0 because you have 3 of them here.
Yeah. So part of or kind of parallel to the 20 rotating streak, this Ironclad and these Ironclad wins were part of a 16 streak with that character as well that I ended up going to.
Nice.
Yeah, I was pretty happy with that.
That is excellent.
I had a lot of success on Ironclad recently, and I do feel like boss swaps were part of that.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you're doing well with boss swaps. I had like an 18 and little run with boss swaps and Ironclad when I was experimenting with it, but I don't know. I had a sequence of runs afterwards that didn't feel as good, and also I just started to get tired of boss swapping in general, so I stopped doing it.
I completely understand. I've moved back and forth on boss swap a lot myself. As occasionally I'll challenge myself to like only boss swap for a month, and I have a lot of fun runs like that. But then I get bored of it, and I decide not to boss swap for a while, and then I gradually work it back in again. I'm sure I'll go back to exclusively boss swapping for a while at some point.
Sure.
It's so hard to pin a number on like how percentage good it is, but it's definitely a way to vary your play.
It's it it might be the hardest thing in the entire game to confidently say the value of,
Wow.
because you're talking about the entire rest. So you have to, for me to say the value of something, I have to. Okay, here's a question for you. If you have two strategies for a character, and one of them you lose 5% of your chance to win because of mistakes you make and win 70 overall, and one of them you lose 10% of your chance to win because of mistakes you're making. So you're making twice as many game losing mistakes and you win 72% overall. So you're making 5% more mistakes, but you're only losing 3% less. Which of those two strategies is better?
Ooh. Oh. So it was 575 versus 1072?
Yeah.
Is that what you said? Interesting.
So if you could play without making mistakes, you'd win 82% with the one where you make more mistakes and 80% with the one where you make mistakes. But you can't do that, and you know of no human who can do that.
Right. But the break even point is reducing the mistakes by 80%. That's still probably almost
Yeah.
impossible.
We've gotten better at the game. Like, if you
Yeah.
stuck at it for 2 years, you'd probably get there.
I'd say the first strategy is probably better, but like over time, you tend towards the
Yeah.
second strategy eventually overtaking it by a small margin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that, like, the amount of complexity that's added to the game by changing your starter relic to one of, like, 20 different things or whatever, and Snekko Eye and Runic Pyramid, they're very different from each other. I think that is a very large boost in complexity, so it leads to many, many more mistakes. So even if it is losing compared to other strategies, if you stuck to it for 5 years, I think it would almost certainly get to a point where it's better more of the time than it is right now.
That sounds right to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Silent Run. There's 5 of each in this 20 streak. That's pretty absurd. Let's see. So this is the other Prismatic Shard run. I don't think it listed. There's 41 cards in here. I don't think it listed everything. Let's see. What else
There's
is
some
missing?
off the bottom, yeah.
Off the bottom is 3 copies of Footwork.
Those are important.
Oh yeah, actually there's a lot of stuff that you can't see that's very important. So 4 Bite Pluses and Jax Plus. It featured in this run. This was a Jax run, and a cool one at that. So it was using Bites and Jax to win.
Yeah,
Let's take a look.
That's super fun.
I did trade max HP for the Bites. So we went down to 42 max HP. Picked Jax from the Jax dealer, then upgraded the Jax. And this deck also took 999 gold from the store.
Cool.
With membership card. And then went to
nice.
2 shops. That's where I bought the Prismatic Shard, was once I had 999 gold.
Sure. And you got an Iron Wave Plus, which is hilarious. This is maybe the best Iron Wave Plus I've ever seen in my life.
It was with 3 Footworks.
Yeah, exactly. Iron Wave Plus is like very excited to be given this opportunity because it has never been given it before.
I think I had like 10 strength and 10 dexterity in the Heart Fight or something ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah, I took 8 damage to heart over 10 turns. It just bodied it with this weird 40 plus card Prismatic Shard deck. And as you can see, 33 relics. It was just like tons of everything happening in this run. Very, very
it's silly. A Black Star run with membership card.
Yeah. I even went. I went 2 copies of Well-Aid Plans just for the redundancy. When you get a deck this size, the second copy can help a lot. Kind of like those 2 Corruption Ironclad runs.
For sure.
It's very silly. Very, very silly. How did this run even start? Is Hexaghost? Oh, I bought like so many things in Act 1 even. First shop.
Is it a gold whale bonus, maybe?
Yes, I started with a lot of money. I rolled into the first shop with 500 gold and bought membership card, dagger spray, panic button, Sorry, Dagger Spray plus with Molten Egg, Panic Button,
Sure, yeah.
Backstab plus, and Centennial Puzzle. So I just got like
Oh, that'll
so
kill
many
some
things in
stuff.
Act 1.
And you got the bronze scales and the Ekabeko already, yeah.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. It was a very fun run. All right, on to Defect. Another boss swap here. Started with Velvet Choker, and still decided that 2 Meteor Strikes was the correct amount of Meteor Strikes, despite the fact that I could only play 6 cards. This is another Runic
Got
Capacitor run,
some.
too.
There's no multicast. There's one reinforced body. How much energy? You have a double energy as well. You have calipers? No. How
No.
much energy did you end turn with in this run, do you think?
Oh, I'm sure quite a bit.
Yeah.
I'm sure quite a bit.
More or less than 1,000.
Not 1,000, but lots. Lots. What's really baffling me is the 2 storms and the static discharge. Just
Are
like
you trying to like
power
work your
spam?
way backwards? Is this like a memento
Mhm.
situation? Little notes written to yourself and you're trying to piece. Okay.
Yeah, I
This is
I
a
definitely don't remember this run per se. So I'm trying to piece backwards what happened. It looks like I went down to
it's a
2 health against
dead
Hexagos.
branch as well. So I mean dead branch makes everything even more weird.
Yeah.
Double bias cog, but no orange pellets and no core surge and no panacea. Is that correct?
That's right. That's right.
So you're
No way to
playing
keep
fights where
the
your
focus. We
orbs
just
are running out of focus.
Yeah, I just had to end the fights before I died, essentially. Worked out okay.
Sure. I mean, sometimes Meteor Strike's good because it deals a ton of damage, which is really weird because it doesn't seem like that would be the relevant half of but sometimes it is.
Yeah. Yeah, 30 damage per card. It's important when you've only got 6 per turn.
Yeah. And you have an Echo Farm, so you get to play that twice and get all of your energy back when the second one evokes all of the orbs, although you also have the Runic Capacitor, so sometimes you won't quite get that. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's I feel like there are lots of defect decks where I just really want to have calipers, not because I need it or anything like that, but because it would be so good here.
So
And
good.
like Echo Form, double Meteor Strike, double Energy Reinforced Body, I'm looking at that deck list and thinking, God, I want to make 700 block and then not make block anymore for the rest of the fight. So bad.
To this
It just
day,
sort of
one of
pains
the
me. There's no calipers.
easiest defect runs I ever had was calipers into 4 copies of Genetic Algorithm.
Oh, yes, I very much enjoy those runs too. Yeah. Did you get the Echo Form in that one?
I don't think that I did, but I
Oh, that's too
upgraded them
bad.
all, and by the middle of Act 2, I was just like 100 block
Yeah. Yeah,
forever.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
All right, Watcher number 3, I think. It was another fun Omniscience run. I think one of the more breakable cards on the Watcher. Very much not an infinite, but a divinity centric deck.
Yeah, double
2
devotion.
double devotion, double omniscience, 2 praise. A card I don't often take all that much, and a prostrate as well, along with Damaru. So the mantra generation is absurd. I was going divine every turn, pretty much. And I've come to really like divinity as a way to generate energy on Watcher late game if you haven't gotten a lot from relics. So for example, the boss relics on this one were Calling Bell, Runic Pyramid, just 3 base energy per turn.
Mhm.
But with divinity kicking in +3 every turn, it was more than I needed.
For sure. Your Watcher decks are definitely engaging with the card pool a lot more than my Watcher decks, which is what's the right word? It's encouraging to see.
I tend to build a lot of mantra-centric Watcher. I don't know that
Mhm.
it's necessarily optimal, but it does work pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, if it's fun, it doesn't matter if it's optimal.
That's right.
Um, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I remember in the 11s out with you years ago, I had a that like basically I had to take a devotion very late. Had to get through the heart fight with like 30 cards in my deck, and I had to scry everything with third eye to get all the way back, make sure that I could draw wheel or wallop rather the turn I entered divinity. to be able to block the big attack, or else I was dead, and I like hit it, and it was like a 1 in 10 to hit it or whatever. This
Yeah.
deck reminds me of that in like very cool ways, and it
Nice.
makes me a little bit sad that I just don't really play decks like this on Watcher anymore, because I don't take most of these cards to put myself in a situation to do it.
Devotion's a fun card. Had a
Yeah.
lot of good times with it. All right, Ironclad. Back to Clad here. We're talking about double corruption, double Welle plans. How about double barricade for redundancy in draw there? This
I
one
like it.
was one of my favorite early picks on Ironclad. First Blood for Blood going to Hexaghost
I love Blood
is,
for Blood.
yeah, really, really solid alongside an early upgrade and the right boss. And then we got Pandora's Box in the Act 1 boss. I think that was where one or two of the offerings came from, and then it kind of built into this huge exhaust block synergy. You know, power throughs and second winds and Dark Embrace and over 4 copies of Shrug It Off with Corruption. Just get a million block, and then once all the skills are gone, it all comes back down to that original Blood for Blood. Make it 0 cost and play it over and over again.
Yeah.
Works really well.
Yeah, I love Ironclad's attack cards, which are capable of dealing with like your Act 1 elites, but are also just capable of killing the heart. Which is like Blood for Blood and Anger are kind of the two you can do that with, because both of
Yeah,
them scale so well off of card draw. Maybe Pommel Strike because of Sundial, but you have to get Sundial for that to be true.
yeah. And the one that's really good late game that I'm still trying to figure out how to use early game, Body Slam on Ironclad.
Yes, Body Slam is very tough to take early, but definitely if you could like fall asleep through Act 1 and wake up in Act 2 with an Act 1 deck that just hadn't had to take any damage cards in it yet, you could add your Body Slam to it, you'd generally be pretty happy.
Yeah, yeah, you would.
What do you think about Shrug It Off on like floor 4 in your hallway fight reward right now?
I'm
Generally.
pretty happy with 1 block card in the first 3 to 4 card rewards on almost any character.
Sure.
So I'm happy with an early Shrug or True Grit. I think both they help a lot against Sentries, Lagavulin. They can be annoying against Gremlin, but that's what your other 3 card picks and your potions are for usually.
Yeah.
So like if you can get away with it, it's good. Taking good early blocks is often a very valuable thing to get sort of ahead. You know, starting to kind of an Act 2 card pick really is how I like to think of it most of the
Yeah, I
time.
agree. I agree. I've been more and more on Ironclad, moving away from Shrug. I think because I'm more and more moving away from Alex, maybe?
Hmm.
I'm not sure I can quite explain why. I'm also like, I used to feel like I needed Shrugs to fuel corruption, and more don't feel like that's true anymore. I feel like I can do enough with corruption without needing the Shrugs in the deck. And so once I started feeling that way, a lot of the reason I was taking the Shrugs was like, I want to make sure that when I get corruption,
Yeah.
but I'm just getting more. I don't know if I'm building the rest of my deck differently, maybe, but I'm getting into situations where they don't seem like they instead, because maybe I'm not taking the 4th energy very often. I'm finding that I play them is if I draw off them to play it.
Very cool. All right, I think we're about halfway through here. Let me see if I can go through the rest of these without too much more time spent.
Oh wait,
So,
let's zoom.
Silent once more. This one was tricky. So, one of the questions I kind of had for you today, I guess this run is a real highlight of how do you beat Act 4 with Silent if you don't get any energy relics?
Hmm.
This run had Nunchaku and Lantern to generate energy with, and that helped a bit. But other
Does
than that,
Tactician count as an energy relic?
does Tactician get it as an energy relic? I wouldn't say it does,
Okay.
but it's not a relic anyway. But it's definitely a way to win. on base energy.
Yeah. My answer is, I think in general, I've moved away from the idea and I've moved toward the idea that it comes from cards. So my answer is I put like Tactician, Concentrate, Even Out Maneuver into my deck, and I build a framework for the deck that lets me draw and benefit from. And Adrenaline, like I said, I take Adrenaline over pretty much every other card on Silent very consistently now.
Yeah, I agree with that. For me, it's been cheating energy where you can with stuff like Bullet Time. Sometimes Madnesses can work too. But
Yep,
just
been taking Madness more often.
making sure to get energy upgrades where I can. Even those just one-time use energy upgrades. Looking at this deck, the upgraded cards, Malaise Plus, Phantasmal Killer Plus, Terror Plus,
Tools of
Tools
the
of
Trade
Trade Plus. I took every -1 energy cost that I could find
Yep.
because it was important to get every single
Yeah,
card in play.
I do that a lot too. Once you stop taking Snekko Eye regularly at the end of changes how you upgrade in Act 1 a lot.
Yes. This I've noticed. The more I'm like, well, Snekko's not even that good compared to like I'd rather have Empty Cage. So I'll upgrade Terror in Act 1.
Exactly. Yeah. And so there's like a massive swing. There are often massive on the change in your evaluation of one relic, where you do see Snekko Eye at the end of Act 1 fairly often, and the fact that you're not really prioritizing taking it anymore means all of a sudden you can take the energy upgrades when you want them for everything else, and once you start taking the energy upgrades, now your fourth energy doesn't matter as much.
Or your card
So
draw cards are easier to pick.
yeah, that as well, because acrobatics is a lot better if you're drawing zero cost things with it.
Yeah.
So yeah, once you
Slice.
stop caring as much about Snekko, you also stop caring as much about by nature of how energy is working for you in that run.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Ultimately, I think calculated gambles with tough bandages that we got at the very end was the saving grace for this one. That and over 100 max health looks like. Singing Bowl was a ton.
Nice. Calculated gamble bandages is so strong.
So filthy. So filthy.
All right, tell me about defect.
All right, I will. Yeah, this one was fun. Is this the one I'm thinking about? Yes. This is the one, looks like, right? We've got hologram recursion. Yes, with a recycle. So
Oof, Darkstone Periapt Bottle of the Flame.
yeah, this was probably one of the hardest runs of my entire Slay the Spire career. I think this was the 14th run of the win streak.
Yeah, believe it.
And I credit this run to what I call intuitive play, kind of like recognizing broader patterns on the defect and understanding that I had to make some specific choices to have a chance of winning. And the choice I specifically credit with winning me this run is picking unupgraded recursion on floor 18 from the two thieves, and then choosing to upgrade it at the next fire. At this point, I already had an all for one, and I think I had a hologram. And it turned out that recursion, I think, was the only one I ended up seeing pretty much throughout the whole run. And my win condition ended up being to go infinite in this deck by using recycle to exhaust the deck down to recursion, skim, cool-headed. And I used the plasma orb from the nuclear battery with the recursion to keep generating energy, the cool-headed and the skim to keep drawing cards. Problem was that this doesn't generate enough block to bypass Heart's Beat of Death on its own. So it
also doesn't deal damage, right?
That's right. It doesn't do any damage either. That's where that you see that one claw in the deck?
Oh. You're talking it up, and all it is a claw deck, Baylor. It's just another claw deck.
So I couldn't get enough block without focus,
Mhm.
but my only focus was bias cog, and I have no
Yeah.
way to keep the focus.
Yeah.
So in the heart fight, I'm on a strict timer
Mhm.
for how many turn I have to go infinite by a certain term number, but I'm also having to bloat the deck with cards in order to keep it alive in the short term. And I just barely managed to like thread the needle here in some gnarly
How
ways.
low did your health go in this run?
So let me read you a couple combat reports. The first big obstacle was Time Eater. Can't go infinite against Time Eater. Time Eater was 10 turns. I took 77 damage, going from
Oh, no.
83 health at full health
Oh, no.
down to 6 health.
Oh, no.
Then I went into Donu and Deka with 6 health and managed to perfect the fight by going infinite. And that was okay. I
Yeah.
bought a fairy in a bottle at the shop in Act 4. I guess that was the best thing that there was, and removed Steam Barrier. That's funny. Took 24 damage to Shield and Spear over 4 turns. Remember, I said bought a fairy in a bottle, Corrupt Heart, 9 turns, damage taken, 120 out of 83.
So you got the full value.
Yeah, I think I had like 2 hit points when I got clapped for 67 with the fairy.
Yeah.
And
That's
then
the dream.
just barely managed to go infinite, killing the heart on the last turn before my focus would have dropped to the point where I could no longer create block with my infinite combo. So I just barely managed to survive using every means at my disposal, just barely managed to get that infinite together, just barely managed to beat heart in one of the most nerve-wracking runs of my entire life.
Yeah, that's really, really cool.
Yeah.
I've had some defect runs like that. I actually had one. I had one where I like won at 1 out of 66 HP by taking between 1 and 3 damage 4 times to get a motion chip to give me output in the heart fight last night. And like I think that I hear a lot of people being critical of defect because they feel like you just like make frost orbs and get focus and it's just sort of like that's just what you do. And on the one hand, like yeah, of course defect has a character specific mechanic with a lot of the around. Yes. But on the other hand, I feel like when defects decks like that are challenged, they are so fun to play. They're so complicated, they're so rewarding. The way
So
that Bias Cog
complicated.
works, if you don't match it to an artifact charge, it's so cool and leads to like it's just one of the most exhilarating feelings in Slay the Spire when you're in the heart fight and your focus is ticking down every and the heart has 800 health.
Yeah. You gotta
Yeah.
choose what turn do I play it on? Do I play it right away?
Mhm.
Do I play it later? Do I
Yeah,
not play it at all? It's tough.
that terrifying sinking feeling of looking at Bias Cog in your hand. If I don't play this right now and I die on turn, I am going to feel awful.
Yeah.
But also, how do you make that decision right now? You have to think 8 turns into the future or something.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
really requires a lot of being able to foresee how to like how the fights are going to play out and finding some answers there. So part of the
For
reason
sure.
the Time Eater fight went so badly in this was that my focus dropped into the negatives. I had orbs with zeros on them and staring down the Time Eater. The Darkness Plus in the very bottom left corner was a card I drafted before Time Eater specifically to give me an answer to that fight, and it's the only
That makes
reason I
sense,
survived
yeah.
at all.
Did you manage to dual cast it?
Yes, yeah, I recursioned it a few times, even to the point where it was no longer growing at all. It was just a 50 damage Dark Orb that I just like recursioned a couple times and then dual cast.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah, it was super scary.
Would you say that that Time Eater fight or the Jawworm was more threatening to your streak?
Oh, I think the Time Eater fight was. I was losing it in that
Okay.
Time Eater fight.
I think I might be on the side of Jawworm still, but I just am a big Jawworm fan.
Who isn't? You know? I think the other thing that's notable about this defect run is the low relic count overall. It's just 16 total relics. It's one of my lowest of the streak.
Yeah. That is very understandable after you get Darkstone Periapt and Bottled Flame because you're just,
But then the
you're going to be
unceasing
struggling
top.
that run. But then the Unceasing Top.
The
Yeah.
Unceasing Top actually did draw me quite a few cards towards the end.
I believe it. Yeah, you've got a decent number of zero costs in there.
Yeah. All right, so just 6 more then. This was towards the end. The next Watcher run was pretty easy.
Ooh, Dead Branch Watcher.
Dead Branch, Snekko Eye, Double
Dead
Wish.
Branch Snekko Eye Watcher?
Yeah.
I have never played a deck like this in my life, I don't think.
Yeah, Vault, Double Wish. Actually, oh, this was cool. This was Fasting. Sorry, Orange Pellets, Snekko Eye, Dead Branch
Orange
Watcher.
Pellets, Fasting, Double Fasting.
Almost always purging the Confusion debuff on turn 1, and then just drawing a ton of cards.
Huh.
With the Snekko Eye.
Sense.
And using Enlightenment Plus. That's the Enlightenment Plus run that was actually good, because it was Purge Confusion, Snekko Eye, Enlightenment Plus. So 7 cards per turn, make them all cheap, play them. It's pretty cool. Not a whole lot
Watcher's very capable of going infinite, but also winning without doing that. And
yeah,
this is a great
I think
example
Watcher
of
is one of the best
very
Snekko
different deck.
characters, period. She's got so many good
Oh my
high-cost
gosh.
cards.
Think so? Here's my problem, is that I think Snekko Eye wins. There's a cap on how often Snekko Eye wins, because once you make all of the zero pull very bad, your card rewards just cannot be above a certain level of good.
I agree.
Because there are too many bad cards.
You kind of limit your card pool when you take Snekko Eye, of course.
Yeah, and I just think that you don't get a playable deck with Snekko Eye too often on Watcher for it to be good. Like, when you do get the playable deck, I agree that, like, yeah, Omniscience is pretty good with Snekko Eye, obviously. And so is Wish and so on. But I just think that you get the unplayable stuff 5 to 10% of the time, even. No longer appealing.
Yeah, I can see that. Well, speaking of Snekko Eyes, the next Ironclad run was also a Snekko Eye. There's quite a few Snekko runs. Kind of to counterpart your Pyramid. I didn't see Pyramid all that often in this win streak, but I did see a lot of Snekko Eye.
Sure.
Let's see, Ironclad here. This was what I would describe as a somewhat standard Corruption Dark Embrace run. Get all the powers in play, do a lot of stuff. We had 150 max health with Feed.
Yeah, Snekko works so well with Corruption Dark Embrace.
Yeah.
You got the Sentinel Plus in there.
Yeah, shout out to Double Dark Shackles Plus for really doing a lot.
Card is very good.
Yeah. Yeah, just lots of really good skills with Corruption, of course, making a good abuse of Corruption with Snekko
damage
Eye.
Your damage here is basically just like double uppercut, heavy blade, yeah.
Yeah, with spot weakness for strength and
Flame is in there.
Yeah. Yep.
For sure.
Yep, nothing too remarkable about this one, I wouldn't say. The next Silent Run, kind of similar. There's some more conventional strong stuff here. Early Toxic, first Relic Pocket Watch. I remember taking it from Niao into next Relic Toxic Egg. And then
do you think that's the best turn 0 in Slay the Spire? I think that's the best floor 0 in
Pocket
Slay
Watch?
the Spire.
Yeah. Helix is a pretty good contender too, but I think Pocket Watch is easily top 5 for sure. Of starts, barring like really good high roll boss swaps and stuff like that. Like
Helix is an interesting contender. It's very good in a lot of the Act 1 fights and at the start of Act 2.
Yeah.
And obviously at the end of the game.
Yeah. And there's Burner is arguably too, because you can set it up for a lot of stuff throughout the run. That's also exceptional. I've had a lot of fun with Prayer Wheel starts, but those aren't like instantly broken the way the Pocket Watch is. Pocket Watch is just like Act 1 is free. Because you draw 8 cards per turn.
Prayer Wheel, it's very hard to compare Prayer Wheel to Pocket Watch because they lead to sort of exactly opposite decks.
Yeah, they do.
Kind of. Yeah.
All right. And this is the last set of last defect run. This was a huge defect deck. 40 cards. What on earth? 2 Echo Forms. One of which was bottled. Gambling chip.
nice.
Lots of orb cards and powers.
You got the anchor. Yeah, you have a really good turn one. Defect decks which get to like bottle the Seeker Echo form and have are just going to win.
Oh my god, I
Basically.
had the sickest defect today on my stream. It was bottled Seek with Necronomicon Hyper Beam. So I just Seek Hyper Beam and kill everything.
What was the time on that run?
It was about an hour. It didn't end up.
Okay.
It was going fast initially, and then I slowed down at the end.
I played a 37 run Ascension 20 Heart Kill on stream the other day.
Oh, and I've been so something I've been doing recently on stream is picking up the pace of my play, trying to get faster wins.
Sure.
And I've had some really good speedy runs. We had a sub 30-minute Ironclad run, a
Oh, wow.
26-minute Watcher run,
Oh, wow.
and a 37-minute Silent run that I was very proud of. with,
Yeah,
like,
I've definitely never
Catalyst.
deliberately tried to play fast. So for me, when I got 37 minutes, I was like, wait, what?
Yeah, that is
Because I remember sitting and thinking for like 2 or 3 minutes multiple times in that run. But sometimes Watcher just has Tantrum and Shuriken and Rushdown.
ridiculous. Yeah, ridiculous.
Everything dies very fast.
Or like Omni Ragnarok. It's my other favorite. Kill everything, turn one with Watcher.
I definitely have played that deck. Yeah, that one's fun.
Yeah. Let's see. Anything else that was really special about this defect? Seemed like a pretty mundane Act 1. Early data disc is nice. I almost died to Guardian. Of course I did. Guardian, man. And then Guardian almost got me on the Ironclad run afterwards too, right? Yes, I remember that. All right, last two. Watcher was number 19, I think. And then Ironclad was 20. That's right. So Watcher number 19. This one was another very common theme here. All the fully upgraded Watcher decks, courtesy of Lesson Learned. This was another remove Lesson Learned in Act 4 deck.
Mhm.
2 Scrawls, Vault, Kunai, Pandora's Box, just like lots and lots of strong stuff in this one. Looks like we were going Divine. Yeah, I had Devotion, Brilliance, 2 Prostrates. So this deck was doing divinity things occasionally. That was fun.
Is the Brilliance an early addition to the deck, or is it like after the Devotion you added it?
I believe it was after Devotion. Let's see if I can find it here. It's pretty late.
I always wondered about Brilliance because to me, it's like the opposite of Predator, where Predator has 2 different things which give it good reasons to be picked at different times, whereas I feel like with Brilliance, it has 2 different things which make it not very good at different times.
Yeah, it's
Like in
often,
Act 1.
often overkill.
In Act 1, it feels like it doesn't do enough damage, and in Act 3, it deals like too much damage. Is how I often feel with Brilliance.
Yeah, I can see that. I can't find where I picked it up. That's funny. I want to say it was after the Devotion.
Okay.
Yeah.
The singular unupgraded Wallop just sort of sits sadly looking at every other card in the deck. You have a Pendib for it too. It's like so ready.
I had the chance to upgrade it, but I removed Lesson Learned at the final shop. I was like, nope. Every
Oh,
card but one for this run.
poor
Sorry.
Wallop.
Sorry,
Poor
Wallop.
Wallop.
Not you today. Not you.
Chemex for. What is Chemex doing in this one?
Was there a? Oh, I think it was because it was to play cards from Dead Branch.
Oh, you have a Dead Branch again.
Yeah, there's a Dead Branch in here.
Oh.
Yeah. This was
okay.
The Dead Branch definitely creating a lot of things. So
you do have a Collect Plus.
Oh, there was a Collect in here. Yes, this Dead Branch Ice Cream and Chemex is why there's a Collect.
Yeah,
that was
that's a
actually
really
pretty
cool
good.
little synergy. I have a lot of respect for Collect. I think that like people look at Deva Farm and they're like, this is a slow fight. I think like Collect does that too. And often it does it actually faster than Deva Farm does. So I have a ton of respect for that card as an option in the runs that need it.
It does some cool things. I have a fundamental problem with it as an X cost card because it's not an X cost card like all the others where you want to put as much energy in as possible. There's
Sure.
actually only a very specific amount. Like you don't want to play collect for 20 because you have to wait 20
Right.
turns to get your energy.
Yeah, I agree. And I've definitely had viewers be like, shouldn't you have played the unupgraded Miracle to play collect one more? Well, no. I need like
Maybe.
3 Miracle plus. I don't need 4.
Right.
Yeah.
And then like sometimes it makes hand size issues. That's weird too.
That is, yeah, a really weird thing about retain in general as a mechanic on Watcher is the hand size stuff.
Yeah. Odd. Yeah, this was a fun penultimate run of the streak. All right, last one. Ironclad number 20. Again, we had a lot of demon forms in this streak for me. I hadn't processed
Another
that. Yet
demon
another
form Snekko.
demon form Snekko.
I think I haven't seen many Fiend Fires. Fiend Fire Snekko Eye is one of my favorite Ironclad synergies.
Yeah, especially with two Feel No Pains to make all the
Oh,
block
yeah.
forever.
Oh, yeah.
And then this was just like Heavy Blade Whirlwind with the strength. Other than that, let's see. We had a feed, so this run ended with 118 max health, and it was one of those runs where we actually had to use them all. It took 133 damage to the Corrupt Heart. And
Oof.
did I
Yeah.
revive or something?
Yeah, where's the heal from?
I had
Irony
Magic
bottle,
Flower.
maybe?
I was definitely healing from something.
Regen pot, perhaps. Yeah, because I don't see it in the
Yeah.
cards. There's no Reaper or Bites, right?
No. Yeah, I think it was a Fairy bottle, maybe. Oh yeah, I bought a Fairy bottle on floor 36, so I had a Fairy for the heart fight. I must have used it.
2 relevant Fairy bottles. You
Yeah.
love to see it.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. This was Fairy in a bottle with Magic Flower and 118 max health too, so it was like a big heal.
Oh, yeah. Have you ever had the Sacred Bark as well? Where it's just like,
Yeah, Sacred Bark.
I have full health.
Yeah,
now.
90% of your health.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, this was a beauty. So demon form with Snekko Eye was a reliable strategy for me. Not a card I like all that often, but it has
Yeah, when you
worked.
get the feed to have a little bit of extra health pool, especially if you can add a Reaper, which I think you got a bit unlucky to. I don't think you had. You've had a lot of strength on Ironclad, but I haven't seen many. And for
No,
me, I
not very many
identified
Reapers
Reaper
during this streak.
one of the main payoffs for having strength.
Yeah, especially if you've got max health like this run did. But
Yeah.
nope.
Yeah. That's definitely a synergy space on Ironclad. The feed plus Reaper plus strength type of thing. And I haven't been finding myself in it as much. I always felt like it was that versus the exhaust stuff. And obviously there's interplay between them. But deciding how I wanted to deal damage was always the interesting thing. Eventually it took more cards to deal damage with strength than it took to deal damage with exhaust. So I tended to favor the exhaust stuff just because I didn't need to spend as much gold on take as many card picks toward dealing the damage.
Yeah, damage on Ironclad is weird. You've got like it exists, I think, very, very much independent of block usually. You can either do the strength and strength scaling attack stuff, or if you're doing exhaust, you can try to cycle one good attack over and over again, either playing like lots of angers or using a blood for blood over and over, or a body slam over and over, or you can try to do infinite with like
Flash
pummel
of
strike,
Steel,
drop kick.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Ironclad, more than any of the other characters, feels like there are a lot of turns where you are choosing to damage. You don't really have much more than that you can do. Whereas other characters is like you're going to leave orbs in play, or you're going to enter Wrath and kill everything, or whatever. The other characters feel like they do things more incidentally.
Yes, incidentally. Big agree. Damage while blocking, sort of.
Flame Barrier is one of my favorite Ironclad cards. Few cards where it's like I am doing one thing I need to do, and
yes, damage and block at the same time. It's beautiful.
Yeah,
and it scales so well, and it's got such a satisfying noise too. If you've got the bronze scales and the flame barrier,
yeah,
it's so fun.
I don't listen to game sounds while I'm playing anymore, but I still remember that is one of the best noises in the game.
Right, and then the final run, the one that lost, was Silent. The 21st run. This was yet another Snekko deck. This one finally betrayed me. You were saying Snekko has an upper cap on
Yeah.
how often it can win, and I think that was kind of at show in this run. Snekko Eye definitely made it challenging. There were a lot of turns where I had to make very difficult choices because all my cards were very high cost. And it felt like because my card pool was limited, I had to skip a lot of cards that I didn't want to skip. And ultimately not able to quite piece it together, although I was able to limp all the way to Act 4. And I even had a chance to win right up until the very end. I think I died with the heart at like 100 health in this run. So it was a really scrappy run, and I think it made a very satisfying conclusion to the win streak, but couldn't quite get there, alas.
Do you feel in general that your losses satisfied 2 years ago, say?
Sorry, can you say that again? You cut out a little
Do
bit.
you feel in general that your losses are satisfying, say,
Do I feel in general that my losses are satisfying? I'd say a good portion of them are. Not all of them are, but I'm always satisfied when a loss had a chance to win. Like especially if the loss was in Act
Yeah.
4 and I didn't get like completely wiped by the elites, for example. I made it to the heart and I had a chance
Yeah.
to win the heart, even if it was a slim chance. I'm always happy with that. And I'm also happy with losses when I feel like there's a lesson to be learned or a mistake that I can point to
For sure.
that contributed to it. And I'd say that happens most of the time when I lose. Not every time, but most of the time.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of my losses variance, maybe not, I don't know. I feel like a lot of my losses recently are trying to pilot a strategy I like, and I have a fairly good idea of what its weaknesses and strengths are, and I understand that I have to take some risks, and this should happen sometimes. That's, like, reasonable. I feel very, like, confidently oriented in a loss like that where, yes, I understand why this happened. Don't think mistake. It reinforces my belief about the game, basically. Whereas I feel like 2 years ago, I just, like, didn't see any playable cards, get up, died.
Right, you're
So,
like, there's nothing I could have done.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think those are much fewer and far between these days because you
Yeah,
either
agree.
see the problem coming further ahead of time, so you take steps to avoid it. You understand more options because you've tried more things. You've seen new ways to get out of fights.
Yep.
And just more experience overall gives you more
Yeah.
problem
I
solving
think
power.
a decent amount of it is my mindset. So moving into, like, the other questions that I had for you, I think I'm not going to go in order, I guess. One thing that has changed a lot about my mindset in runs is I'm thinking a lot more about the last half of my runs than these days. And when you asked how have you changed early act 1, which I feel is a sort of similar question. Um, one thing that I'm doing early act 1, setting up to beat act 1 transitions very easily away the rest of the run. And I used to be like a leaf floating on the wind or something when I was playing Slay the
Going wherever you...
take to get through the next thing sort of idea. And my belief as I was doing that was basically that the next few floors are very threatening. I will lose a lot of runs in Act 1. I will lose a lot of runs in Act 2. And that was true at that time for that balance patch with the cards at the strength that they were at. But increasingly, my belief as I play a Slay the Spire run is like I should comfortably beat Act 1 or beat Act 2 with better than 10th percentile luck, basically. As long as things are going okay, I should to comfortably beat these things, which means I can be pickier and I can start asking, like, do I think that the strength synergies on Ironclad or the exhaust are easier to put together to, like, beat the late game stuff? And I think the last time that I had a really big win streak, which was only earlier this year, so not that long ago, I went 30 runs where I made it to the heart every So I was like not losing in Act 1 or 2 at that time. And my reaction to that, you might think that's like, oh, that's awesome. You must have like you really nailed down the Act 1 and 2, so I bet you like never make it to the heart. But my reaction to that was actually to observe that I was dying earlier. And in the last like 60 runs I've played, I have only died to the heart one time now. Like all of my losses have been in Act 1 and Act 2
Yeah.
because I swung to the other side where it's like, okay, I'm going to play Act 1 and 2 like they aren't scary to make sure I can win the end game.
Yeah, you can clearly
If I'm going to see evidence they're not killing me, you know?
before you clearly weren't getting strong enough for Act 4, so you have to change your behavior to get more
Yeah.
power early on. And that might
Yeah.
mean dying more, but it could mean winning more overall too.
Yeah. So my answer to like how have you improved your play for early Act 1? I've gotten worse at it. Actually.
You started playing more
Um,
aggro. I could see that.
Yeah.
That's so
And
I
there's
guess
always calibration to do there. Like I'm not going to claim I have it all worked out, but work in progress.
yeah, I think my own optimizations in that regard. I talked a little bit about a jawworm. Yeah, that little rule I learned. If you draw 3
Yeah.
strikes, you have to play 2 of them. I'm not going to forget that. And there's a couple other little like optimizations I found, like if you get a 29 health medium slime on Ironclad, then you want to bash strike the medium one rather than killing the small one.
I like that line a
Sometimes.
lot. That's a cool line, yeah.
Yeah. And then otherwise in Act 1, I guess sort of going into another question about commons. Redefining the commons that I'm willing to take or willing to take often on each character has helped a little bit for me.
Okay.
On silent, I feel is where I made the biggest changes.
What's your most important comment on silent?
My most important comment on silent these days, I want to say, is backflip, actually.
Okay.
And I'm hearing a lot of praise for acrobatics from other players, and I
I'm
completely
into
agree.
acro.
Totally into acro. My feeling is that backflip is acro that I get to take in Act 1, and it still uses my energy to output numbers while I'm
Sure.
drawing cards with it. So it ends up being this thing that scales with dexterity that's good later on, but it's card draw that is also a block. And that's actually really, really nice.
Okay.
And then the other
Yeah.
one that I'm really liking on common, on silent as a common, is Dagger Throw as an early attack card
Mhm.
because it opens
And
up so
enables
much.
all the discard stuff. Yeah.
Exactly. Just enables all the discard while doing a little bit of damage at the same time. Oddly enough, one of my, in terms of run data, one of my highest performing commons on the silent. Go figure. Like
Yeah.
80% of my wins that I pick a Dagger Throw, I win.
Huh. I stopped looking at that stuff, but I should do another one of
Yeah,
those.
I
Those
think there's a lot
videos where
of
I analyze those things are cool.
false conclusions you can arrive at if you take it too literally.
Very much. It sort of tells you what you're doing rather than telling you what you're doing.
Yes, exactly.
So for me with acro, so there are 2 things with acro. One is I've always loved playing acro. Like way back in the day, I spent a month just trying to turn 1 kill every enemy on silent when it was not correct, but I just loved doing it. And I always loved the part of the silent run where I got to see acrobatics. And for a long time, I thought that was too. And for I think a lot of patches, it's true that it was. But so I do this. You know how in chess puzzles, the fact that there's a solution makes you look at the game so you can find the solution? Do you do chess puzzles at all?
I've watched a few of them.
Okay.
Channels like Frag and Chess Network, but I don't play a lot of chess stuff myself. But yeah, I'm familiar with puzzles and chess.
Yeah, there's a really interesting mental thing where when you're playing a game of chess, you don't necessarily think, but when you show in a chess position and tactic, you'll find it. And with silent, part of the reason that I started taking acro all the time was just that I like, but another part of the reason is that people were doing really well on silent, and I was just like, oh, I guess acro must be good now. Like, to me, that was just the only possible way that results that people were starting to have on silent made sense. And so started playing with acro. I still haven't like watched a ton of other people's silent at all. I don't I generally like developing strategies on my own. But to me, if people are like winning 75% silent runs, like acrobatics has just got to be a good card. It doesn't make sense to me that there's any other way that that could be happening. So
Yeah.
that was sort of it was weird to like mentally process the fact that that was why I was choosing to do the thing I was doing, because I like to develop strategies on my own, but also I have a large logical brain that's trying to solve Slay the Spire and using all of the evidence that it takes in to do so. So that was where I went. What about Ironclad Defect Watcher? Just like if you had to name one common that was the most important to see in Act 1.
So for Ironclad, kind of similar to Silent, card draw is absolutely essential to get where you can. And I feel like Pommel Strike ends up being the Ironclad early answer, one of the best damage commons for me to find.
Sure.
Whether you end up upgrading it or not, it's also sometimes part of an infinite if you go Sundial with Exhaust, which is quite nice.
Yep.
I'd give a shout out to Anger as being also very exceptional in the common pool for Ironclad. And I think I'd rank those higher than like True Grit or Shrug or any of the other commons.
True Grit went massively down in my estimation when I started valuing card draw higher, because once you value card draw highly, like second with Sever Soul and just do it better than True Grit does, you know?
Did you just say Sever Soul does a better job than True Grit?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah. Let's get some
Like-
Sever Soul admirers in here.
I think it is true. If you're taking Burning Pact in Act 1, like if you're taking Offering over almost every other card,
I had
to get to that point.
I had a 5 Offering Ironclad today.
Yeah. Did you have any exhumes?
No, I was actually exhausting them all with Burning Pact because I wanted to keep my health.
Yeah, I believe it. I believe it. That makes sense.
It was like, how few of these can I play each fight?
For me on Ironclad, it's anger. It's just
Anger,
anger.
yeah.
Like, just anger.
I've had
I'm
so
not
many
boss swapping though, so
many runs
that makes it more important.
win off the back of just like play Anger a billion times with 4 points of strength and just
And it's,
clobber.
if you take the Ironclad starter deck and add an anger to it, the deck just,
Yeah, you
the
just get
Ironclad starter deck draws too much energy worth of cards to play every turn. And anger loves that.
yeah, it practically doubled the damage output of Bash, and it just gets better
Mhm.
and better the more you draw it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really good.
How about Defect?
Defect. For me and my personal playstyle, I think the 2 commons that matter the most are the card manipulation commons, Hologram and Rebound.
Sure.
To the extent that I actually like both of these as a floor 1 pick, because
Okay.
both of them open up so many other options at floor 2. Like picking Claw on floor 1 is a bad idea. Doesn't go out very well for you very often.
Say that quietly.
But if you pick Hologram and then pick Claw, it actually goes pretty well because you can play the Claw 2 times per deck cycle.
Sure.
And that's true of quite a few cards. Streamline is something I've really come around on Defect. Speaking of commons,
Mhm.
by playing it 2, 3, maybe even 4 times per turn, if you can line your manipulation stuff up well. But it's ultimately all about getting your best card on Defect or your best cards and giving yourself repeated access to that. So having 1 Hologram or 1 Rebound lets you start breaking open a Turbo or a Skim or any abusable 0-cost card or anything like that. And I've
Yep.
had many, many, many runs win off the back of this.
Yeah, that all makes sense. I am in a completely different place, but that all makes sense.
Yeah,
to
you're
me.
gonna say what compiled over cool-headed, right?
Yeah, which I already said that earlier.
Yeah. And I
For
totally respect that
me-
too.
For me, the strong defect cards are like defragment and recycle and the things surrounding them. Like these are the ways you like go infinite or generate so much passive block every turn that you can't die, and so on and so forth. Or fission, like I said earlier, that further accelerates. And so for me, I wouldn't want rebound on floor 1 because I've had too many losses to rebound putting a card on top of my deck, and then I'm 1 less card toward drawing my defragment. basically.
Yeah.
Which is just a different way of prioritizing the cards. It's not necessarily better than the other. And if the game, which is definitely an if, but I think Slay the Spire is like somewhat balanced. Right?
Yeah,
I would,
if the game is balanced.
yeah,
Mm.
I would say that like both of these strategies could easily be within a standard deviation of as good as each other. So it's very possible that no human could ever prove that one was better than the other. And I think that's a really
Yeah, and it could also be
potential
that
thing for the game.
my strategy works better for me and your strategy works better for you.
Also, yeah, because we're more familiar with the synergistic space that we're within,
Yeah.
human players are imperfect, and that's a really important thing to. I feel like one of the reasons that I don't talk a ton about strategy for Spire are really into, maybe not even deliberately, but maybe accidentally pitting each other, where they're like, well, Baalorlord really likes taking this card on Watcher. Is that, do you like think he's bad? This sort of idea, like that's their conclusion. Where you have to understand that like we are imperfect humans and we're used to certain things and capable of piloting different decks in different ways. And so it makes sense to us, whether for our win rate or for fun or for interest, like, or for learning new things or whatever. It's not necessarily a statement about like this is the right way, wrong way. There are lots of ways.
There are many ways.
Yeah. There was one other thing I was gonna say about win chance for different commons, but I think I was gonna say like I've always felt like defect is the most able to take a damage card or a defensive card or a scaling card on floor of any of the characters. Because
I think that's true. I think defect can very easily get away with block. I love floor 1 charge battery.
yeah,
Even
yeah, I
steam
think it's
barrier
quite good.
sometimes can be quite nice. Auto shields, easy. I'll take that.
Yeah, and I definitely don't feel the same way about like silent, for example. I would not take a like I'd take a really good block card on silent on floor one maybe, but I wouldn't take a medium.
Don't catch Jorbs taking dodge and roll into Gremlin
Yeah, I
Knob
would
on
not
floor
take
7.
dodge and roll on floor one. Um, and with Watcher, I feel like I just want a damage card on floor one. I almost don't even want a scaling card. Like I almost don't rush down on floor as Watcher.
Yeah, you
And
want your floor
with
1 card reward on Watcher to be remove defend.
yes, yes, and then get a smite. And then who's the other one? Ironclad. Ironclad can sort of do all three.
Ironclad's got fun options on floor 1.
Yeah,
I feel like I least often go block, but like I'll take an Inflame or a sometimes Feel No Pain or Dark Embrace or Combust, or there's lots of powers you can take floor 1 as Clad.
for sure.
Italicize.
Yeah. I have taken Shrug floor one as Ironclad in my life, for sure. I think I do it less now than I used to. Taken Flame Barrier floor one as Ironclad.
I like early Flame Barrier.
Yeah,
Even on 3 energy, it's such a value card.
for sure. Okay, so that was defect. Most important Watcher commons.
Watcher commons.
Or common.
It's a little tougher. I like the 0 cost Watcher commons a lot. Consecrate for the AoE. Very, very good upgrade, especially. And Prostrate as one of the best Divinity entry cards.
On floor one.
Not necessarily on floor 1 for Prostrate, but it is takeable early.
Okay.
I will take Consecrate floor 1 pretty happily.
Yeah.
Other things that are okay, I don't know, Crush Joint, Sash Whip, but mostly I'm looking for uncommons on Watcher. It feels like not that many commons that I like.
Yeah, I didn't have a clear answer to this question when I asked it of myself because I feel like Watcher wants uncommons and like 2 rares.
Yeah.
I think I am usually looking for a bit more damage early on Watcher, and I think Empty Fist is quite good at that.
Yes. Yes.
I also quite like Crescendo, because one of the fail conditions of deck card be Eruption against Gremlin Knob.
Yes, or Lagavulin. I've seen many disastrous Lagavulin fights. If Eruption is stubbornly just like
yeah, you can draw poorly against Lagavulin for sure.
On the first of the 2 attacks each time, and then Vigilance doesn't show up, and you just can't do anything.
Yeah. There was a conversation I had with Terrence once where he just like very casually said like, and you have to value this card highly as your second way into Wrath. And I don't even think he was talking about Crescendo. It's like saying when you're off of your second way into Wrath on Watcher, you should just take it. Because so many of your loss conditions on Watcher in Act 1 are drawing Eruption in the wrong
Yeah.
place.
Do you
Which makes a
take
ton of sense to me.
Indignation much on Watcher, the Wrath
I do.
Vuln hybrid?
Yeah, I like Indignation even in Act 1 because entering Wrath is enough and because often it's a useful solution for Hexag. It's useful against Lagavulin. You often need a bit of damage scaling in Act 1 for the boss, and Indignation is damage scaling that works with down.
Mm-hmm.
Also Mental Fortress, like it works with your strongest
Yeah.
cards in your card pool, basically.
Yeah, I've come more and more to really appreciate the cards that are like, do this thing or another thing, because
Yeah,
it's a flexible tool.
for sure. Okay.
Yeah.
How I mean, this is a really big question. Maybe we'll leave that to the end and have any. Do you have any cards that have dramatically changed in value for you over the
Let's see, dramatically changed in value. I might have to say Demon Form, actually, looking at my run history.
Sure.
I'm really impressed with how that it's so useless in most fights, but as a specifically anti-boss card, it's very hard to beat Demon Form on Ironclad.
Mhm.
Let's see, other card that I've really changed my opinion on. Like I said,
Demon
I'm
Form.
valuing Backflip a lot more on Silence and very happy
Okay.
with that.
Yep.
And on Defect, I think Meteor Strike is probably the standout that has really come to the forefront of my mind. I used to ignore it very often because it's like it's going to be too much of a pain in the butt to get this in play. And now I'm looking at it like if I can get this in play anyway, it's going to be worth it. So I'm starting to take it more and finding it very abusable.
I've had some really cool runs where like working out how to Act 2 with Meteor Strike was how I won the perfect run. The other way. Yeah. You have one for Watcher?
Card that I've changed my opinion on Watcher. Probably the Divinity cards I've actually come around on a lot more.
Sure.
Even Prey, actually. I've been taking Prey a lot, and so I feel like I've got a better handle on when you can and cannot take Prey.
Yeah.
You definitely need an abundance of card draw first, because it's one of those tricky cards that doesn't do anything immediately. Watcher hates those
Yeah.
cards with a
Yeah.
passion, but it can be really nice. Two Prostrate pluses and a Prey, I think, is my favorite 10 mantra engine on that character.
Sure.
3/3/4. It works out perfectly.
And Prismatic Shard for All for One.
Prismatic Shard for All for One. That's right. To get back the prostrates. I think I've done that one time. Prostrate All for One. That's fun.
Easy game.
Easy game.
Easy game.
Yeah, easy.
Trying to think what mine are now because I asked you the question, but I think for me, weirdly, Dark Embrace is the card that has changed valuation for me in Ironclad, which is weird because it was already like S tier and it's S
No,
plus
it's like
plus 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 tier. Like,
serpent faced here. All
yeah,
the S's.
yeah, exactly. That's kind of a weird answer. I think Blood for Blood as well as a card that can just be all of the damage in a deck.
Yes, definitely my biggest like floor one pick on Ironclad that
Yeah.
changed. And I think I would say the same of Eviscerate on Silent. I didn't used to realize it was like
For
the
sure.
best floor one pick.
Yeah.
It's not quite that, but it's really, really good.
It's very high up there. Yeah, for Silent, like Sneaky Strike, Eviscerate. Basically every card on Silent that gets better if you take Acrobatics earlier has gone up in value for me.
Yep.
But perhaps on Silent, the card that has changed the Wraithform.
Wraithform. I was just thinking about Wraithform as a card that's gone down in evaluation substantially.
Was there a Wraithform in these 37 runs?
I saw one in one of my Silent runs.
Oh, I have one. Wait, no, I'm going the wrong direction.
I know I've seen myself deliberately skip many Wraithforms.
Okay, I have some Wraithforms. I have 3. Yeah, I guess I don't note them anymore. Nightmare Wraithform is definitely a win condition. I had 3 in my Silent runs. But yeah, I do not take it as often. And the reason for that is that I do not think that it is necessary for winning the late game anymore. So if I'm taking it as like a tempo oriented card for Act 2.
Yeah. Yeah, I usually find myself taking it when I have my damage sorted, but my block is just not together
Mhm.
whatsoever. But if I've got a
Yep.
footwork and a well-laid plans, I don't need a Wraith Form. That's kind of how I'm looking at it these days.
Yeah. And like it's definitely obviously still an incredibly strong card. But this is one of those situations where it's gone from S to only
Hmm.
S or A plus
Yeah,
for
yeah,
me.
it's still exceedingly breakable for sure.
Yep. For defect, it's Fission very easily. Fission used to be like a card where well, that's really lovely, good, play it, but it doesn't really fit my deck. It's gone from that to being like, well, Fission is so strong that I have to build my deck so it be good. And I'm very frequently having 2 Fissions in my deck, and I'm very frequently playing them on turn 1,
Yeah.
and it feels strong. So I've been liking that. And for Watcher, I think it might be lesson learned. Because the fewer cards you're taking on Watcher, it is your cards. The last time I took lesson learned, it's because I hadn't found a damage thing that dealt 20 in Wrath, which is very funny to me.
You need to be able to break that
Um,
wing statue.
yeah. Um, exactly. It's obviously still a strong card, but the issue I've had with it is that my Watcher losses are tending to come to getting attacked for 20 on turn 1 of Act 2, and Lesson Learned is a bit slow to really help with that, and I am not finding that I lose much other than that anymore. And when I do, it's not in ways that Lesson Learned really helps with. It's like to a really bad Gremlin Nub draw, or um, to not finding any cards that do what I need for a late game. So those are my answers.
I guess to kind of just segue off of that, a question you ask is, would you identify as the most likely causes of a loss on each
Yeah, for sure.
character? And you named one of the big ones for Watcher, which is early Act 1 elites going badly. And it can actually be any of the three, right? Lagavulin with a bad draw
If
order.
you don't get into Eruption, if you don't get into Wrath for Gremlin Knob, if you don't pair, like, I feel like I've gotten to a point where I understand when Lagavulin take 40 sometimes, because Watcher's so strong that you can, if you recognize you might die, you should just take 40 instead,
Yeah.
basically.
Yep.
So I don't think I've died to Lagavulin very much, but I have definitely taken lines in the Lagavulin fight where and then sentries is quite difficult on Watcher, although I've found that taking um very aggressively, like taking 2 to 3 good damaged cards is my priority on Watcher and
Yeah.
does really well for everything up until Act 2.
I've started to find some really aggressive lines that can help with sentries if your deck is struggling. Like
Yeah.
sometimes you've got Bowling Bash or whatever, you can just kill them easy. But
Yeah.
in situations where it's like you don't have what it takes in a prolonged fight against the sentries, Watcher fares very, very poorly because you basically can't enter Wrath.
Yeah.
So sometimes you just enter Wrath immediately and you take 20 from one of them, but you just kill the other two immediately. And
Yeah,
then
that's
that actually
very,
ends up being
very common
the
for me.
easiest way to win.
Yeah, definitely when I think about Act 1 Elite fights as Watcher, I think that I am in Wrath. Like,
Yeah. Just
I don't
all
think
instantly.
Lagavulin attacks for 20, I think um, when I'm playing Watcher against Lagavulin. And that isn't always the case, but I'm always thinking about worst case scenario as Watcher because that's sort of the only one you have to worry about.
Yeah. And I think the other big loss case for Watcher is, for me anyway, turn 2-3 against Heart. Of course,
Uh-huh.
Watcher has 67 max health, Heart attacks you for 67, you die if you don't get some kind of block engine going. And not
Yep.
every Watcher run is able to get the like talk to the hand, mental fortress, whatever that
Yep.
you need. So sometimes you
That
just kind of
one
fall flat there.
that one is why I stopped building the sorts of decks that you're building on Watcher.
Yes, I completely get it. And I've had a couple Watcher runs that have been like real close to the edge against Hard
Yeah.
for that reason.
But there was always a feeling for me of like, if I built this sort of deck a bit better, I would have won. And I don't know. If I kept trying for like 2 or 3 years and got better at it, would that have happened? I don't know. Because I traded my losses to the heart for losses to like getting attacked for 21 by Shelled Parasite. And it's currently it feels like the right choice, but it sure isn't enjoyable to get attacked for 21 by Shelled Parasite and just be like, well, I built a deck that cannot do anything about this.
Drew Eruption in 4 strikes. Yay.
Yeah. Whoops. Oh dear.
Yeah. So I guess I'll go backwards in character rotation on this one. Defect. Most likely places to die. What do you think?
Act 2, Gremlin Knob deals me a lot of damage as Defect very often.
Probably the worst elite matchup in Act 1.
Defect's area of effect damage is really good and also so
hard to find, but good.
Yeah, it's great that Electrodynamics exists and do such a one of the cards that's up and up and up and time. And Sweeping Beam's fine too. I'm happy to take a Sweeping Beam like in Act 1 or whatever.
You really got to upgrade it. And Sweeping Beam, it's a card that's good with Hologram and Rebound. I'll put it out there.
It definitely is. Yeah, if I'm reliant on Sweeping Beam for my damage in Act 1 for AoE, I am much more likely to take Hologram, for sure. That synergy is very present in my mind. But if you don't get those 3, like what do you do? You fight against Gremlin Leader and you're like, well, every 2 turns I can do enough damage to minions for attack. Yeah. If Gremlin Leader does, it will be for 63.
63. Yikes. And technically Blizzard is an AoE damage card, right?
Oh, that's true. I've had more runs where Blizzard's good once I've leaned more into Fission. It can actually deal 30 on turn 1 now with the types of decks I'm playing.
It's pretty wild.
Yeah.
Not many decks that could do that.
Yeah, and it doesn't do that by the time that I get to Gremlin Leader for sure. But like it fairly regularly. Like that is not unheard of output for my Defect decks on a turn 1 of Act 3 and 4.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, so Act 2 multi-enemy fights, the 3 cultists, the slavers, the Gremlin Leader can all be a big problem. Collector too, depending on the deck. Although Collector, I think Defect fares a little bit better against because if you're using
the orbs don't get frailed.
Exactly.
Yeah. Same with Lagavulin, where like one of the reasons I feel okay about taking Cool-Headed is how good it's obviously not great against Gremlin Knob, but it is very good against Lagavulin and Sentries.
So good.
Very good is maybe like overstating it, but it's like it is clearly good enough against those 2 enemies to be justifying taking it for what it does later, in my mind.
Simply beautiful. Yeah,
but then Gremlin Knob still exists. With Defect, I skip elites in Act 1 and 2 much more often than the other, and feel like it's right to.
I think
I feel like
Defect can really thrive on a small, heavily upgraded deck.
Yeah, for sure. Your card pool wins you runs. You don't need the relics anywhere near as much.
Yeah, I think you said previously, Defect more than the other characters can outscale the game with its card pool. It's like focus.
I mean, Watcher can as well, but
yeah, definitely. So very definitely.
Yeah, the way that Defect does it feels different though. It's like you're not going infinite. You are just the number that you make is bigger than everything else in the game.
Every turn.
Every single turn by pressing E.
Yeah.
Silent. How about Silent?
Slime boss, of course. I think is one of the big issues for that character.
You know, Slime boss is tough for Silent. I did a grudge match against Slime boss though, as Silent, where I was like, I'm gonna play 50 Act 1s with Slime boss at the end and see how I do. And I stopped after going 9-1, where the only loss was to a mistaken elite fight, where I'd stopped preparing for the Slime boss fight because I felt on it. And I just was like, well, actually, if I prepare for this fight, I just win everything. So my takeaway was just like, I am not respecting the Slime boss enough. And ever since I did that, I feel like I've much better.
Yeah, that makes sense. If you are keeping the exact capabilities of the slime boss in mind
Yeah.
and counterpicking appropriately. If your only goal is to get out of Act 1, the question is, can you do that in a way that sets you up for Act 2 and Act 3?
This, for me, goes back to a thought that Electrobolt expressed to me like 3 or 4 years ago. Electrobolt is definitely one of the best silent players of all time. Very heavily on that character and played it. And he was looking at a card reward screen in Act 1, like comparing like a couple of cards he was choosing between. He was like, "Well, I guess it's important for me to admit that Act 2 exists." And I was like, "Whoa." Like, because he was thinking so heavily about how not even bothering to consider Act 2 yet. And obviously that's too extreme. Like, that isn't how you actually should play, but it's a tremendously powerful mindset to have sometimes. And I've definitely played. I am going to just pretend only Act 1 exists. And I've played some runs where literally I beat Act 1. So it's interesting to see how play changes when you do that.
Definitely. I've seen many runs where all you needed to do was just get to the next boss reward screen in order to
Right.
round the corner, so to speak. Like
Yeah.
runs that have limped past champ using a weird potion combo, and then just like suddenly it's easy because you got Pandora's box with an egg
Yep.
or pyramid or something.
And I've played the game long enough that I've like been fighting Nemesis with a deck that cannot possibly branch from screen. So,
Yeah,
Corruption and Dead branch from one floor is kind of good.
pretty sweet. Pretty sweet. All right.
I don't know where Silent dies because I think I've won 19 out of my last 20 Silent runs.
Wow.
Like since I leaned more into acrobatics, I just don't really. I don't know. I have struggled to lose on this character of late.
Impressive. Let's see, where else do I struggle on the Silent? Not to the heart, that's for sure. I feel like Silent has the best heart matchup of just about anybody.
Oh, yeah.
Let's see if I can
Piercing Wail
sort
is so ludicrous against the
Silent
heart.
losses.
Malaise, well-laid
Time Eater.
plans, legs.
Time Eater, Corrupt Heart, Slime Boss, Grab the Knob, Slime Boss, Corrupt Heart.
Lots of slime
Time Eater.
bosses.
I'm seeing all right. I've seen 4 entries for Time Eater in the last like 10 runs of losses.
I've also died to Time Eater recently. Time Eater can be a bit tough for sure.
I feel like Time Eater is the most difficult of the Act 3 bosses if you're playing on A20 because of that head
unless you're
slam
playing
move.
a really weird deck that cares about Awaken 1's strength gain, but those are uncommon, I think.
Yeah, those are pretty rare.
I've been talking all about how I've been spamming into the deck that only one that I've had that didn't do that lately. Like I just had Blade Dance and accuracies, and I didn't draw the Blade Dance fast enough when I was getting attacked for 1 billion. And I died.
Blade Dance decks are very challenging against Time Eater, I've tended to find.
Yeah.
To the point where I usually stop myself at 2 Blade Dances because if I go further down that road, I end up critically weak to Time Eater or Heart for Beat of Death.
Yeah, I agree for sure. Like if I'm using Blade Dance as a damage source, I also like will take Deadly Poison Plus in Act 3 sometimes.
Yeah. It's surprising how much of a difference one Deadly Poison can make against Time Eater.
Yep, for sure. And then when you get offered your Catalyst next floor, you're like, oh, good game. Where are your Ironclad losses?
Ironclad. I feel like Ironclad's kind of all over the place. I don't know that I have a common. I sing a lot
That's
of.
That's also how I feel
deaths.
about Ironclad. Ironclad's so weird.
Like maybe to Hexaghost as a occasional death, but oh yeah, I'm seeing a few Hexaghosts here. Looking through my losses, but not a whole lot of repetition.
I've been buying 2 Sentries and
Sorry, Sentries and what?
Sentries and Gremlin Leaders recently.
Oh, Gremlin Leader, yeah.
I had 2 Gremlin Leader deaths back to back.
Oof, the win streak, brutal. Grem Leader's
I'm
such...
I'm not sure if it was actually a win streak or if it was. I'm only sorting by losses.
Yeah. Grem Leader's one of those weird fights where even if you fail the deck check, you sometimes get to go on, kind of like Nemesis.
Yeah, you just
Sometimes the enemy just gives it to you by using the wrong attack pattern.
right, and you can manipulate the attack pattern by killing the ads. So you have enough single target to kill the ads, or putting yourself in the zone where you're only 30% to actually attack.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, usually the other place my Ironclad runs will die is late Act 3 when it just kind of is like this pile of cards that
Mhm.
don't really synergize together. When Ironclad can't really create anything cohesive, it all just kind of
Yeah, and then
falls apart in the late
transient
game.
just kills you.
Yeah.
I definitely have Ironclad runs where I'm like, I am in Act 3, I am drawing 5 cards, 3 of them are my starter cards, and transient's attacking me for 80. Like,
Yeah.
this deck didn't happen, I
To
guess.
strike, defend, Ascender's Bane in demon form. Hooray.
Oh my god. I drew Demon Form, Corruption Ascender's Bane on Vect not that long ago. I clicked Pandora's box, and then the next turn of combat that I had was
Pandora's box is so fun sometimes. It's
yeah, the
wild.
thieves attacked me for 22. You know, you know how it goes.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Would you like to talk about avoiding burnout tonight, or is perhaps a 3-hour video recording evening already a cause of burnout?
Let's touch on that real quick for our ending, I
Okay,
guess. I think that'll
sure.
that'll be good. So, burnout. How do you avoid burnout while streaming? You and I both have streamed Slay the Spire for many thousands of hours,
Mm-hmm.
yet we continue to choose to return to the game, and sometimes we even have fun. So the core question
I
is,
almost always have fun.
how do you ensure that you continue to have fun? How do you avoid raging or being bored by or feeling discouraged by the
Yeah.
Spire?
For me, the game itself doesn't bore me in any way or burn me out in any way. For me, I have always loved strategy games, and I've always loved talking about strategy games. For me, I started loving 3, and I started loving talking about them when I was 8. So, and those have been constants throughout my life ever since. In fact, a lot of the ways that I relate to other things in my life are based on those passions uh, as a starting point. So, like, the way I think about relationships is informed by strategy gaming. The way I think about
Hmm.
like having other hobbies is informed by my love of strategy. Um, so for me, I have always loved playing strategy games. I've always loved talking about strategy games, and Slay the Spire is just the best episodic viewer experience strategy game in the world, I think. And I have never, while playing it, thought, gee, I'm bored of playing this game. I'd like to play a different strategy game. I spent a while playing Monster Train. It was great, but it's not like I was bored of Spire. It's just Monster Train was really good. Um, but anytime I'm playing Slay the Spire, I'm like in flow state, doing the thing I love most in the world, talking to a bunch of people about it in a way that I enjoy, and that just doesn't, for me, that doesn't get old ever. Um, what does burn me out with Slay the Spire is like the stuff that is the streamer career part of it.
Yeah.
The like being a public figure, having people talk about you, having people decide that they know who you are and give you unsolicited advice or tell you things about yourself that they've decided. Because when you're a streamer, you put all of yourself into your content and then other people decide what it means and they tell you what it means. And it's very hard to keep who you are central in your brain.
Yeah. How do
When
you
you've,
separate yourself from other people's perceptions of you,
yeah.
especially
And
when that's being
then
live fed to you?
you get feedback on what people like and do not like. Um, in strategy gaming, I think being somewhat egotistical is very important. It is hubristic to go against one of the most complicated strategy games and say, I can work out how to beat you. And so for me, like confidently saying like I think this strategy is right is central to my ability to pursue this game. It's not how I like treat my friends or other people or stuff like that. I'm not an asshole to human beings in general. But when I'm talking about a strategy game, yeah, I'm gonna be sort of a jerk to it. I don't have to respect your like guardian boss fight. Like, no, absolutely
Yeah,
not. That's not
I
what I'm
will
here
bully
for.
the champ with 100 Metallicize.
Exactly. But because of the streamer element of it, for me to feel confident and strong about an opinion about Slay the Spire becomes frictus for other people, where they see like Baalorlord likes to build a big Watcher deck and you don't. What's going on? He sucks, and it's like
It's
that
not the
has
size of the deck that matters.
yeah, and my desire to feel strongly about strategies in Slay the Spire has no real interface with Baalorlord in any way, right? It's just not what's going on. So for me, that's the struggle, is working out how to navigate all of that. And I've had real issues. Like I banned backseating on my channel because I was having anxiety from the way that people were backseating, both the quantity of it and the like pitting me against other people that was going on, and the back talking when I tried to explain my strategy, and people didn't understand that I was confident about a strategy and I'm trying to win at a strategy game, not because I think other people suck or something. Sometimes people get those confused. Um, so I did that. I have the auspicious title, I think, of having banned more Slay the Spire else in
Ban more cheddars.
So yeah,
Well, you're
building
the
a
world champion ban person.
absolutely. Yeah, but building a channel which is full of people who like will respect me and understand the traits that I have and value them, instead of like pushing back and saying like you are boring, play faster, where it's like, but this is part of me. For me to deny the fact that I want to logically analyze a turn right now takes away part of me, and you're asking me to do that day in and day out every day of my life for like a 6-hour live stream for years on end. I don't want to give up what's part of me. Like, if you don't like me, go watch someone else, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, getting my ego to the appropriate size, I think, has been very important for avoiding that sort of burnout, where I started with an ego that was like Play-Doh, where, like, if somebody punched my ego, it would just, like, flatten, and I'd feel fucking awful. And there have been times in my streaming career where my ego start to like get a bit better. Like, oh, I'm like pretty good at this streaming thing. I'm pretty good at playing Slay the Spire, stuff like that. And I found that when my ego expands too much, people like poke at it, and it hurts me for people to attack the things that I'm like proud of and celebratory of and stuff. And so I have an ego that is very like compact and structurally sound. I I mention my achievements every like 2 or 3 months, and someone's like, "Oh, I can't believe you're gloating about." I really don't do that. I have achievements and I talk about them a very appropriate amount of the time, and I'm confident. I trust that I'm doing this okay. Um, I worked out how to take advice from people I trust and ignore unsolicited criticism from people I don't trust, and I worked out that I'm not like the smartest person in the world or anything. I'll never be a strategy gamer. People who are awesome. Honestly, a lot of the world's most valuable people are not streaming Slay the Spire on Twitch. Like, they're doing
Blasphemy.
other things, you
What do you
know?
mean?
So I'm an entertainer, and being an entertainer is important, but I think I do a decent job of understanding that it has a level of importance. I'm not um yeah, and for me that has generally worked. These are both conceptual things. There's physical stuff, like you have to go outside regularly. You have to take days off. This
Yes,
is
you have to take days off. Vacation has been a big one for me.
yeah.
I know. So interesting. When you talk about avoiding burnout, you're mostly discussing the streaming aspect of it, the interacting with a huge crowd
Yeah. Well,
in a
there's
public.
also I discussed the mental element of it. There's a physical bit, which is like if you imagine you're a house plant, you basically get all the way there. So I think that's pretty simple. Like, get sunlight, get good food and water,
Yeah.
get good rest.
Basic office ergonomics are a pretty important thing,
Yep.
especially in this career. So I used to have this big cozy chair that I used
Hmm.
on the stream. I was sitting in it last time we did a collab video,
Yeah, I remember that.
and that was a big sort of core piece of the stream for a long time. But what I didn't really talk to people about was that I was in the big recliner in the first place because I had sat in an office chair so much that it had become painful just to sit
Yeah.
in a normal chair, and I had pushed my body to the point where I could no longer comfortably sit in a normal chair. And so I had to
Hmm.
make a change to something. I did a big recliner, and that worked out really well for a long time. But I was in there because my body was injured.
Yep.
And over the years of streaming, I've had to make a lot of adjustments to my ergonomics, the way that I hold my mouse, the amount of hours that I
I have
play
a
per day.
I have a vertical mouse.
Oh yeah. I've got one of these. Yep, very
Yeah, we
similar
have the
here.
same one.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. That's helped quite a
Because I
bit.
started having RSI.
Yep, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
This job can
Exactly.
become physically painful. It becomes mentally painful. I have had therapy. I have had a as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, you spoke absolutely to the sort of mental and physical aspects of the social engagement. I agree with those 100%. Very similar journey. You don't seem to have any trouble in terms of like engaging with Slay the Spire itself and keeping that interesting.
No, not for me. In fact, people ask me to play mods for Slay the Spire, but I want to play Slay the Spire.
Yeah, you're like, I'm
So
really happy just doing A20 runs. And I get it.
exactly.
It totally makes
Yeah.
sense. For me, I do feel like I need to vary my play a little bit to stay interested. This is part of why I'm personally married to the rotating character format. I change
Yeah.
characters every run
Oh,
because
that is necessary for
Yeah.
my sanity.
yeah, exactly.
couldn't-
It's necessary for my
At
sanity
this
too.
point, I couldn't do other than that. When I started out, sure, but at this point, no.
No, I have to keep changing characters because I don't know, it feels too samey otherwise. And likewise, I don't let myself pick the same cards in the same way too
Yeah.
many times in a row. So I'll start picking like after 20 watcher runs in a row. I'm just gonna be like, it's pressure points time every run. Let's go.
Yeah,
Just for sheer variety.
I'm in this weird place where I kind of want to hold 80% rotating win rate for, and I'm fairly close to doing it. And I think I'm more than 50% to pull it off probably if I go for it from here. I'm ahead of pace right now. I'm ahead of pace 71 runs in. So that's
That's
29
good.
more.
That's pretty good. Yeah. That's not that bad.
But I am getting so bored of taking the choices that I think are right.
Yeah.
when I like, I'm so ready to just play 240 hours and stuff again because yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And so something that I do to avoid burnout with the game mechanics itself is occasionally kind of put self-imposed rules upon myself.
Mhm.
A long time ago, I did this with the ladder streak challenge, where the goal was to beat all the ascensions consecutively. This was back before getting longer win streaks on E20 was something
Yeah.
people were managing to do.
I started a YouTube series largely inspired by your challenge where I just did a new account and I'm just playing Ascension 0 up to Ascension 20, which I've never done before because Ascension 15 was out for a year or something before
you can make
Ascension 20
1,000
was.
cuts work when you're doing that.
I do it at Ascension 20, Baalor. and I've encouraged you to do it as well.
I will. I
Live
will
your
take
dream,
the
Baalor.
next Act 1,000 cuts that I see
Yes.
based on this conversation.
Yes.
I'll do it.
This makes me happy.
Yes, excellent. And so once I felt like I'd mastered the ladder challenge, I started doing it with additional caveats. I did a no skip ladder challenge. That was one of the most fun things that I've done. That culminated in a 50 card A20 silent victory.
Do you have to pick up Prayer Wheel if you're offered it?
Yes. Yes.
Oh.
Let's go with yes. Yeah. That one was fun as a challenge format because I found myself taking lots of events to avoid the card rewards that were so bad.
Sure, yeah.
So that was
Yeah,
that was
hallway
fun.
fights are actively bad for you. That's
Yeah.
funny.
And then I did max 20 cards with the ladder format. And I've done similar things. I've also made variations to my A20 play, like boss swap only, or now my goal is to do 45 minutes average runtime or less. That's what I'm
Sure.
trying to do right now on stream. And that's been fun. It's been exhausting, actually, but very fun.
Do you something that I've always been irritated by about that is you have to build your deck differently, right? It's not just playing faster, it's also like actually have to build a different sort of deck because some decks take too long to collect the cards.
Some decks take way too long. Yeah, like acrobatics, spam, any kind of clicky infinite can really slow you down.
Yeah. The silent run I played where I played 440 cards on turn 1 of the heart fight would not have been a great deck
Right.
for beating the game in under 45 minutes.
No, yeah. So and that has led to stuff like I just took a catalyst on floor 1 because
Sure.
I don't care if it doesn't work out.
Well,
and if it works out, it was
I mean,
great.
if you lose, does that lower your average? if you die on floor 6?
Yeah, it was a 5-minute run, right? Easy.
Yeah, pretty good.
That's pretty funny.
When I do my like winning 100 times in 30 days sorts of things, that's never about maximizing the number of times I win in 30 days, really. Right? It's like this is a different way to play where my goal is slightly different. And I'll usually come in like playing 1.5 to 2 runs because that's where I'm most comfortable, I'd say. And then over the course of a couple of weeks, I'll be like dialing it in to a point where I'm playing 50 to 60-minute runs. But I don't go to the point where I'm building my decks differently. Like if the run tells me I should build a deck that takes time to play, I'm going to do that, even though I'm setting those challenge conditions for me. I don't really like the time element making my card choices change. That's not something I'm a fan of.
Yeah, and you never decide to do anything like, okay, I'm at the start of Act 2 with a really crap deck. I'm just going to abandon run because it's faster to do that.
No, I try to win all the runs.
Yeah. That's for the most part what I've been doing. I've been in 1 or 2 runs, but I'm just trying to like win fast, with the winning be more important than the fast currently. Let's see if I can continue to feel that way. I can't quite go as fast as I want to for long periods of time because, again, the RSI is an issue. Sadly.
Right, yeah.
Brutal.
For sure. Do you find that you store stress physically while you're streaming? Like your shoulders get hunched, feet get curled and stuff like that?
Yeah, my back, like tension. After I get off stream, I have to like twist with yoga for like 10 minutes and I can just feel it slowly bleeding out of me.
Yeah.
All that tension between my
I have
shoulder blades.
Mandatory full credits watch after every heart kill because that is the way that I have discovered to force myself to stand up and walk around and things.
So you said
necessary for my health.
Full what?
Full credits watch.
Full credits watch. Gotcha.
We always watch the entire credits of the game after every heart kill on my channel.
That makes sense.
Well, I don't because I'm walking around, but my viewers have to.
Yeah, that's good. I've adopted a habit of a 5 to 10 minute break after every run, generally speaking.
Yep.
Breaks are a weird thing on Twitch, as I know you're well aware. You bleed money for every second that you're not on the camera, but at the same time, you need to take the breaks for your human self. So it's like,
yeah, but it's like the jawworm fight. You have to take 4 damage.
Yeah.
To,
Yeah. So for me,
I'm going to use the jawworm fight as a metaphor for things in life.
The jawworm is the journey of life, really.
Yeah.
Like
I'm going to be on a first date. I'm going to be like, well, my friend Baalorlord went jawworm, and I learned a lot from that.
Right. Yeah. Like if that can happen to me, is your life really so bad? No.
Yeah. If you want the pasta, I say go for it.
That's right. Great. Yeah.
All right. Well, it has been really awesome to talk to you. This has been a very fun conversation.
This has been a very enjoyable 3 hours.
Yeah, I think we covered a billion things that are very interesting about this game and streaming and mental health and physical health more generally. So
Yeah.
again, this is Baalorlord, who's on twitch.tv/Baalorlord, and links below. And I'm Jorbs.
This
and
is
I'm
Jorbs. Yeah, he's on YouTube and Twitch, a very, very talented Spire Slayer. Also dang good at Celeste, I might say. And just a very, very cool dude to talk to and listen to a lot. So if you've not heard of the one and only Jorbs, please check him out.
Yeah,
And many
and
thanks
Baylor
to
is
you,
also on YouTube.
Jorbs, for our conversation today.
Of course. I'm sure I'll talk to you again sometime soon, and I hope everyone's enjoyed the thing.
This is Baylor signing off. Toodaloo, everybody. Thanks for watching this absurdly long video.